Okay, I will say hello and welcome back to another episode of All About Balance. And today we are joined by probably the joint most handsome man in the entirety of north of England. We are joined by the one and only Mr. George Huggins. George, how are you doing, my friend?
Hello, man. I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really, really good. Happy to be here, showing off the power stash.
Yeah, for those of
Which
you
I've
that
been
can't see, you'll have to use your imagination to look at the power of the stash, or just go to YouTube. It's whatever you
just imagine the most low resolution pedo tash that you could possibly conjure in your imagination, and it's
But on
probably
the
worse than that.
on the face of an Adonis, though. You know what I mean?
Oh God,
It's
Harry,
not that terrible.
you are far too sweet. You asked me earlier, actually, is there anything that I particularly wanted to talk about? And this already brings me to something that I didn't actually think, yes, I want to talk about that. But now that you've said that, I definitely want to talk about it, which is, have you told the story of how you first came to Scramble Academy Leeds?
Have I? Probably not in its entirety, but I will have brushed upon it when somebody asks me about Pantheon.
Okay, so let me just set the scene for those who don't know Harry personally, but Harry loves jiu-jitsu, loves traveling, and is just kind of a people person, evidenced by the fact he's doing a
God.
podcast.
I don't know if I agree with the people person, but maybe we can get into that after. Go on. I
Well,
don't
maybe
stop
it's
you.
maybe it's just a facade. Maybe he's just very good
Yeah.
at pretending to be a people person.
Yeah.
But Harry's from the London area. I'm currently living in Leeds, training at a place called Scramble Academy Leeds. And within the first couple of years of Scramble Academy being open, they start getting some really big names in for seminars. One of those names being Firas Zahabi, obviously GSP's jiu-jitsu coach and just world-renowned black belt, and pretty knowledgeable guy.
Yeah.
And this was, I think, my first ever seminar. I was still pretty new to jiu-jitsu. I didn't really have that much of a foothold in MMA. I wasn't one of these people that was hugely invested in the scene at the time. But when Firas Zahabi came up, even my cousin, who's just like an MMA watcher and doesn't really train at all, was like, "Oh my God, Firas Zahabi!" And I was like, "Oh, okay, I've got to go fucking see this guy's seminar." And loads of people from all over the country came, which was really, really cool for Scramble. And Harry turned up, and I don't think I actually really met you until after the seminar.
No. Trinity Leeds.
But then yeah, pretty much, or like round the table. So we have like a table in the entranceway of the gym where people kind of congregate before and after sessions, leave their water bottles and stuff like that.
Drink each other's water. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Where there's 4 of the same Evian water bottle and everyone's sharing the ringworm.
Yeah.
And we were sat there, and I think it was around this time that Harry busts out this Tupperware container of what are possibly the nicest cookies that mankind has ever experienced, and just starts handing them out to people. Like, he's come all this way. I mean, what's London to Leeds? It's like a 3.5 hour. Yeah, 3.5 hour drive. You've come all that way, no knowledge of anyone there, and just brought a fuckload of cookies for a seminar that you just decided to come to. Like, I just think that's so proactively nice in a society that is so regularly just very reserved, especially in England, man. Like, everyone's so afraid to be nice in case they look like a weirdo. And just turned up with like a box of cookies. And then we went to Trinity Leeds, which is it's like a food court in one of the major like shopping centers in Leeds. Sat down and just got to chatting away. And like, since then, even though we're so far away, I think Harry's made some great connections in Leeds, and we all love him to pieces as well. Well, because this guy just turns up with cookies, I think the guy deserves a pat on the back, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, that's very, very kind of you. So to fill in the gaps of, I guess, a bit more of a logistical understanding of that story. So obviously, at this point, I actually agree with you. I wasn't super deep in jiu-jitsu at that time. I was still very much an early-ish white belt. And I was, though, an MMA nut. Like, I've been an MMA nut for quite a while. I was watching MMA for about 3 or 4 years before I even moved to London. So I was well aware of who Firas was and whatever. And I had no knowledge of Scramble Academy Leeds. I had no knowledge of Liam or anything like that. But I saw on Twitter, bearing in mind, Firas is not active on social media whatsoever. He's not active on Twitter. He's not active on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. He's got a YouTube channel, but he posted on Twitter saying something like, "Oh, I'm doing a seminar in Leeds." an upcoming seminar. And I'm like, oh my God. Actually, I don't even think it said in Leeds. I think it just said an upcoming seminar in the UK. And I was like, all right, I'm in. How do I get involved? And I clicked the link and it was in 2 days, right? So this was a Thursday. It was on a Saturday. And I messaged the gym on the Facebook page. And I was like, look, I know I'm not a member. Is there any chance that I could get a place in this seminar? And nobody replied for about 6 hours. And I was constantly checking Facebook, sweating my arse off, right? And eventually, I think it was Liam or Fred that responded. And they basically said, there's not any room, right? And I'm like, okay, let me know if there's any possibility that I can get in, right? And Liam, it was definitely Liam the second time. He messaged back and he was like, look, we shouldn't do this, but somebody's just dropped out. It's 4 members. Do you want it? If you can pay me the money now, you can have it. And I was like, look, I'll pay you the money twice if that's possible, right? Like, let me just fucking get in this seminar. So I do that. And I messaged at the end and I said, look, I'll bring something to make it worth your while. So enter a Tupperware box of cookies. I actually had 2 Tupperware boxes of cookies, but one was given to Firas and one was given to the gym. And there's a really interesting follow-on from that story, actually. So I mean, we'll get into the kindness or whatever, but I gave him the cookies, right? And we ate them at Trinity. And at the end, he ate about 5 of a box of like 8, right? And then I went to Canada, I don't know, 6 months afterwards. And when I walked in, not only did he remember my name, but he then asked me, do you have any cookies with you? And I was like, for us, I've just come from fucking London. Of course, I haven't got fucking cookies with me, but yeah, like, I guess cookies travel the world in a very unique way. But the kindness thing, like, I don't know, I felt in some way indebted to Scramble, or to Liam especially, because, you know, some random guy, you know, you've dealt with Pantheon stuff, the amount of fucking random people that message you with empty questions and empty promises, it doesn't bode well, right? So for Liam to take a chance on some guy messaging him on Facebook, saying, oh, can I take a member's place at this seminar that you're running? You know, that's uncommon in the first instance, I think. So I felt in some way indebted. And obviously it's transactional, right? I paid in the money there and then, so I booked my place, it's fine. But to open the door to some random guy you don't know. Like, at this point, I didn't know that this was a thing in jiu-jitsu. I didn't know this was a thing in gyms. And yeah, I took it with open arms, obviously brought the cookies up. But it's very interesting. You mentioned that story. Because the amount that's actually followed on from that story, Pantheon, some other things that me and Liam have got, like my, you know, I probably, can I announce this? I guess I can. So there's going to be a Scramble 2.0, right? Like, as you mentioned, the old Scramble. And Liam took me to the new Scramble building when it was just bare bones. I've now seen it again when it was like 6 weeks off completion. You know, that sort of, and the relationship that I built with so many people from Scramble is just, it's kind of incredible. And it all happened, yeah, from Liam being kind enough to let me on the seminar. And yeah, do you remember the feeling when Firas walked into the room?
Not explicitly.
Oh my God, I remember yesterday.
I think, like you say, because I was so early on, I didn't quite understand how mad it is to have someone of that caliber in the room. You know, it's like if you were a football fan and Jose Mourinho just walked in the room, you know, to teach you about football, but you don't quite have a grasp on it because it's a little bit more of a niche sport. You know, it's not in the Daily Mail every day. Not that anyone should read that shit anyway, but you're not so surrounded by it in everyday life involuntarily. You know, you really have to go out and find jiu-jitsu. So it didn't quite hit me, but I remember speaking to so many people because we mix and match partners all day, and everyone's just buzzing. Everyone's got this little twinkle in their eye, you know. There's more people there that I haven't met than there's people that I have. Everyone's just absolutely vibing. I remember Scramble at that point wasn't massive. Like, it was a decent sized room with good quality facilities, but there was more people on those mats that day than they'd ever seen before, and probably didn't see that many until another 6 months later again, you know, when Scramble had really started getting off the floor. So it was a really, really big occasion. I think, like you say, risk taking as well for Scramble. Like, as a business, that's a bold move, because I don't want to ask for us how much he makes off of seminars necessarily, but I know it's not cheap to come all the way from Canada to the UK.
I mean, I asked Liam, he told me it's fucking not cheap.
Yeah, exactly. And a business that's what, 12 months, 14 months into being open, taking that kind of risk for its community, I think that shows a lot of balls, you know, and it's the same sort of concept that applies to having you up, you know.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, for us was actually in the UK coaching, right? He was here coaching Olivier Aubin-Mercier at UFC London, but they paid for his travel. They paid for him. Went and picked him up. They then drove him back to wherever he was. We obviously went out and paid for meals and this kind of stuff. And yeah, like to pull the money, put it this way, the people that were at the seminar did not cover the cost of that seminar.
I can imagine that. I could see that clear as day, quite frankly.
Yeah. But as you say, to go and get a name like that, and eventually, like I came to the Craig Jones seminar, there was nowhere near as many people at the Craig Jones seminar as there was at the Jude Samuel, one of the first black belts in the UK. There wasn't as many people there now, and even then, like Liam got his black belt that day, right? Like, and people kind of knew that Liam were getting his black belt that day, and not enough people, not as many people turned up as the Firas one, and yeah, it was nuts. Like it was nuts. It was a very packed room, and I'm very, very grateful to have been there, because not only did it kind of give me an avenue to go to TriStar, to go to Canada, well, it also gave me an avenue to, as I've already stated, like meet all of you guys, and there's a real poeticism about that, I think.
Yeah, and when you think about how many logistical little things, like you seeing that tweet on Twitter 2 days before, messaging the page, like how many things had to line up for us to end up where we are today, like is mad. But now when you look back on it, you can't think of it going any other way, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of the reasons why I don't like the idea of chance, is there's so many complicated and complex decisions that are in that. Like you just stated it so beautifully. For me to see the tweet at a time that was relevant enough for me to message the Facebook group and all of these dominoes that had to line up perfectly in order for me to turn up on those white mats on that day was just, you know, the chance of that, the probability of that is probably not as likely as, you know, winning the lottery or whatever, but still pretty insane. And, you know, I followed Liam to Manchester for Polaris. I followed him to Wales for Polaris. We've been to seminars at other gyms together. You know, it's been a wild journey just from those cookies. That's for sure.
Oh, 100%. Like those cookies really set off a chain reaction when you look at it. But it says a lot that you went to Canada and Firas remember the cookies. Like they were good fucking cookies, man. Like they were.
Thank you, mate. That's very kind of you.
They weren't some sort of Tesco bullshit. That was some serious baking, quite frankly. It was you who made them, right?
Yeah, it was me that made them. I haven't baked since, but yeah, it was me that made them.
I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I think that there's something as well about Scramble. And there was something, you know, you gravitate to people naturally, right? Like the way that you gravitate to Steve and yourself and Sam Hemingway and Sam Howard and these kind of guys. Fuck Sean McGuinness, useless cunt. But
prick.
Yeah, the worst. But and I think
stay in Manchester, Sean.
Yeah,
go back to Manchester.
Just go back to your hometown of Manchester, Sean.
Exactly.
And actually have some decent MMA picks if you could, please. That would be useful for our MMA podcast. But yeah, I think there's something that you gravitate towards when you're there. And I remember walking in, and I can't remember who I partnered with in the Firas seminar. Was it you?
I don't think so. Like I said, I'm not sure we even crossed paths until
I have no idea who I partnered with at the Firas seminar. And that's probably really bad. And if the person that partnered with me at the seminar listens to this, please tell me it was you. That would be very kind of you. But I remember rolling there for the first time. Like Liam was the first one that sparked my heel hook interest. You know, like I wasn't doing any heel hooks until that day at Scramble. Right?
That's where it all went wrong.
That's where it all went wrong. Like I was adopted. I didn't put the gi on after that. No, it's not true. I actually put the gi on today. You can see the mark on my nose.
I can. Is that gi burn?
No, it's not a gi burn. I actually got punched in the face while somebody was trying to head and arm choke me, but these things happen. But yeah, I mean, I just it's hard to put into words without blithering on about sentimental things, the impact that day had, you know, like, yeah, it's difficult to put it into words, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Quantifying that sort of effect is just ridiculous. Completely impossible.
And I
But I
wonder,
think,
go on.
sorry, go on.
No, please do.
I was going to say, touching on the Scramble community is something that's really kind of kept me in jiu-jitsu, and it's something that
Yeah.
I've not traveled much in terms of to other gyms or cross training or anything like that. Not because of any sort of policy that stops me, just one, I love Scramble so much, and two, I'm broke. You know, everybody does jiu-jitsu
Sure,
broke.
sure.
But we've got like a sister gym where one of our head coaches manages at Lancaster called Kaizen, run by Michael Wood and his partners. Very good gym. If you're ever up Lancaster way, definitely check it out. Got
They
some
got Mike Wood
absolute
as well.
killers. Yeah. And we were organizing like not so much a dojo storm, but like a friendly dojo storm where, you know, if we won, we were going to lord it over them. And if they won, you know, it didn't really count anyway. It wasn't a dojo storm.
Exactly.
But that was due to happen just before COVID hit. And that was like the first time that Scramble was really going to get out there and kind of train as a gym at another gym, you know, really kind of see what the level is like and try and just take some training tips from other people. Like we've been to competitions as a gym and we've done really, really well. Like a lot of our guys have absolutely smashed it, which just speaks to the level of coaching, which is great. But we've not really just done much cross training. And I think no matter how good, like if you've got your Danahers and stuff like that, who are literal encyclopedias, but that man's 1 in 7 billion, you know, you
I
really,
agree.
really need different perspectives. You need different learning styles, different teaching styles. I think everyone in the room benefits from having that. And you know, you might find a new like Pokemon rival at another gym. You know, yeah, roughly the same level. You just clashing heads, and you're trying to fuck each other up in the nicest way. But you always want to like keep edging above the other person, and that's, you know, it's that 0.1% progress that you might not necessarily get at your home gym day in day out with the same people.
I agree.
Because you become friends, you know, you get a little bit lax, and sometimes the training isn't quite as hard as it should be. Or sometimes you are just going at each other and not really exchanging techniques. Like just training at another gym, I think, is so invaluable sometimes. And the Scramble communities, sorry, go on.
No, please finish.
I was going to say, and the Scramble communities really kind of opened up that pathway for every one of its members. You know, there's none of that. I don't want to say politics, but it is essentially politics in a lot of gyms around the UK.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah, bullshit's probably a better word for it. Bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. And I think, like, I didn't check or bothered to check whether the gym that I was at and the coach that I was under at the time cared whether I went or not. It was a decision that I was going to make because I just don't care about politics. Now, as it turned out, it was fine. And I went back and I was like, oh yeah, I did this shit for us. And he showed these cool triangles from Side Control and blah, blah, shotgun arm bars and these kinds of things. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. But like, to touch on the Scramble community, I've been to a few gyms now, probably 10 or so. And I've not found a community quite like Scrambles. The moment that you walk in, of course, there's that nervousness about I'm in a random place and it's kind of a competitive, combative situation in a lot of ways, right? Obviously, seminars are slightly different because you don't do the rolling until the very end. And it's, you know, you're 3.5 hours deep at that point and everyone's kind of brain fried. But, you know, it's still a new environment. Sometimes it feels hostile. Scramble did not feel hostile, right? Scramble just felt like it was a bunch of people in a place trying to learn something. And I think that that's a massive, massive credit to Mike, Fred, and Liam, right? Because, and obviously to everyone else, but it's always set, the hierarchy set from the top, right? And if the intent was to have a more political gym, then it would feel like that, and it doesn't. You know, there's no policies about cross training. Like Liam, when he comes down here, I haven't managed to get him to my gym yet just because timing has been off, but I'd love to get him to my gym. And there's a couple of guys that I'd love to bring. And equally, I have raved about Scramble so often in my gym that about 15 of us are going to come up, rent an Airbnb and see if we can get a day when there's Scramble 2.0. You know, and again, it'll be good because there'll be fresh bodies. There's some black belts I'll bring up. There's some brown belts I'll bring up. There's some fucking scrub white belts I'll bring up. And then, you know, there's me. And, you know, like, it will be good. It's good training for everyone. And I agree with what you said about nemesis. Is like, my Scramble Academy nemesis is Sean McGuinness, right? And we're not on the same level at all. But in the 2 roles that we've had, he played bottom and boloed me to oblivion, and then when he played top, he just wrestle fucked me into oblivion. And I want to castrate him for those things, but here we are.
Message being, fuck Sean McGuinness.
Yeah, essentially, yeah, fuck Sean McGuinness.
Fuck Sean McGuinness.
But you know, it's something about sort of extrapolating out on those things and taking them to a place that's not jiu-jitsu. There's just something about community, right? There's something about the necessity for community, and Scramble's a kind of a cool place because there's not 1,000 people at the gym. There's not 750 members. There was, you definitely outgrew the old gym, and I don't know how many members that is, maybe 350, 400, something like that. And of those 350, 400, there's probably 250 people that train 4 times a week, and then there's some guys that can't make it because of other commitments. But you build a basis and a stable of a community that can go to competition as a team. I've never seen that in any gym that I've been at. There's a gym in London that does it quite frequently, but if there's a competition, then from our gym, you might find 5 guys that go. I came up to to be in Steve's corner for an Empire. There was about 30 Scramble people there. Unheard of, right? I went to another Empire just to watch, and again, about 30, 35 guys were there from Scramble, right? And you know that they're there because they do the 10th planet thing where the bags are all in one place. They're all there, and there's 35 people around a mat screaming for one guy who's probably winning 14-0 already at this point. And, it's like blood sport on the side of
And then in the corner, Liam, halfway eating a burger, asleep on the bags, about 10 minutes before his match is due to start.
So this is probably my favorite Liam story ever. So I was supposed to compete on the same day that Steve was competing. Now, I didn't end up competing. I ended up pulling out of my bracket because we had to get to Polaris in Manchester. We didn't have the time for me to compete. But so Liam is having the biggest match of his professional career against Chris Fishgold in Manchester on Europe's largest stage for now. And, he wakes up. I go to his mum's house. We go to his fucking mum's house just outside Manchester, right? Arguably the kindest woman I've ever met in my entire life. She serves us fish and chips, right? Liam pops some melatonin, goes to sleep. We wake up 9 a.m. He drives Steve to the match. Steve weighs in. Liam falls asleep in a corner. And he's like, wake me up when Steve's on. I wake him up when Steve's on. Steve has his first match. Liam's half asleep. He's coaching him literally lying down, right? Propping his head up with half an arm, telling Steve what to do. Steve gets 14-0 up, whatever it is. Boloed this guy into oblivion. And Liam's like, all right then, mate, you just have some fun now. Steve's second match, Liam shit-talking the ref, right? Because supposedly, something else had happened or whatever. Steve wins gold. Everything's grand. Liam, as you say, halfway through a burger, runs to his car. Me and Steve get on a train. We end up, and then he goes out and puts on a half-guard clinic against Chris Fishgold, one of the, the best black belts, best competitive black belts in the UK, from the MMA scene especially.
Absolutely.
And then there's an absolutely iconic photo at the end where Liam is knelt down in front of the crowd to
both arms up,
the adoration of essentially 40 Scramble members who for that match, I bought a ticket in the front row, and there wasn't many people there at that time. So essentially the entire of Scramble was in the first 2 rows, right? And they were just bowing in adoration and screaming at the top of their fucking lungs for this half-guard performance. And everyone was looking like, should we know this guy? Is this guy?
Who the fuck is that guy?
Exactly. Who the fuck is that guy indeed? Liam is Jeremy Stevens of Jiu-Jitsu. But yeah, it's just so Liam, right? And then just to finish that. And then you see Liam run off in the back, warms Fred up, comes out, and is so nervous for Fred's match. And you're like, but yeah, that's Liam.
The man's constantly busy. And the worst part about all of that is actually a story that comes before that by a couple months. where Liam himself was competing at Empire. And the reason that that man is so good at getting
Oh,
halfway
yeah,
through a
this
fucking
is
burger and
hilarious.
sleeping is because he had a lot of practice doing it. Because
Yeah,
Liam
yes.
was, I think maybe he'd had his first match and was taking a nap between the first and the second one. But he was
Allegedly.
literally eating a burger, just sat there, napping, coat on, curled up, complaining about the cold after winning his first match. And his opponent's like jumping up and down, getting psyched out. And this is still a thing that gets mentioned on various social media from time to time. His poor
Yeah.
opponent, like, really had no idea what he was getting himself in for. Because at the point that Liam was competing, he was still a brown belt anyway. But Liam was not a brown belt at that
Sure,
time.
sure.
Like, not by
UK's
any
best brown belt by far. Yeah.
Asterix James Orr.
Yeah.
And this poor guy is watching his opponent asleep on the mat, eating a burger, just having a grand old time. And then he wakes up about 2 minutes ready for the match and just fucking goes to work.
Yeah.
Just switches like some sort of button and is just ready to go. And the man is, he's just an enigma. He really
is an
really
enigma.
He will find any point to rest that he possibly can because his life is just so constantly full and busy because he just doesn't stop. You know, he's one of the most hardworking people I've ever met. And for anyone who doesn't know who I'm talking about on this podcast, but you probably do if you've listened to this podcast before, is a man called Liam Cann. He's one of the directors that Scramble Academy leads, along with Fred Greenall and Mike Wood. And
he's also one of the directors of Pantheon. He's also a budding entrepreneur for various things. He also is a competing professional coach and black belt competitor. He also is a partner. He also is a friend to many people. He also
works for Bellator on the cages on the weekends.
Yeah. So there's Bellator. There's, I mean, the list
He's
is...
an MMA judge.
He's an MMA judge. He's an MMA coach. He's an MMA corner.
Yep, jiu-jitsu referee for certain promotions around the north of England. Like, the man just does not fucking stop. And he still makes time, like, to be around his mates and support all his friends and build a community. And I think he's a gift to jiu-jitsu. I think whatever jiu-jitsu is given to him, Liam is trying to give back tenfold.
So I've said this to him personally, which makes it okay for me to say publicly. I think in 20 years, we're going to look back and he is going to be one of the pivotal points in UK Jiu-Jitsu.
I hope so. He's going to be fucking exhausted, even if he's not. I'll say that much.
Yeah, he's going to be kneeless, elbowless, and probably faceless by the amount of injuries I've seen that man take on his face. One of them coming from your good self, sir. And
maybe more than one.
Yeah, maybe more than one. But yeah, I think there's going to be a time when we look back and we really relish the real impact that Liam Cann has had on UK Jiu-Jitsu and UK MMA. I really, really think so.
I think that's a good prediction. I'm not a betting man, but I'd say that's a pretty solid bet.
We were talking just before about lockdown and these things, and I wanted to, and I was just in the middle of exiting RuneScape after fucking up some farmers, but yeah, like, I wanted to talk to you about lockdown and how you're getting through it and how you feel about it. Like, I know that you're one of the people that I've met that is, A, male, and two, like, vastly in touch with his emotional well-being, but is happy to speak about it as well. And I wondered if you had some thoughts about lockdown and how it's treated you.
I can obviously speak for me personally in terms
of course.
Lockdown's been hard, man. Lockdown, I think, has been pretty hard on everyone. I think at the beginning of lockdown, everyone very much experienced the novelty of essentially just having, like, what was a well-earned rest for a lot of people. You know, so many people are on that 9-to-5 grind that, of course, isn't actually 9 to 5. People get up at 7 a.m. You know, they're traveling to and from work. You know, it's probably closer to a 7 to 7 job more often than not. And then people bring work home with them. Like, a lot of people work really, really hard and have not much time for themselves and their own emotional well-being, which I think is a real shame currently. But I think that novelty wore off pretty quickly. I think a lot of people I mean, if we look at humans in general, we're not engineered to be necessarily by ourselves. You know, we're social animals, and lockdown obviously takes nearly all of that out of your life. And it was pretty hard to be away from people for a lot of people. Me personally, I'm what you'd call an extroverted introvert. 99% of the time, I am by myself, chilling out, not speaking to anyone. And I'm not unhappy with that necessarily. Like, that's kind of where I like to be. But if I find someone that I gel with and someone that I really enjoy spending time with, you know, I'm suddenly like, the ADD really comes out. I'm loud, you know, I'm center of attention. I like to be around my friends and enjoy their company. So for me, lockdown was pretty okay, you know. And as things started to look better around, when was it, like August time, kind of late July, mid-August, that sort of time, people started trying to do a little bit more normal stuff, and it seemed like things were potentially going to get better. You start seeing people in the park. I started doing some Muay Thai training outside, with some of the people that used to train at Scramble. And Muay Thai was never really my bag, but I really started to get into it, you know, something to like stimulate me mentally, get me physically moving, keep me fit. All that stuff was really, really beneficial. And I think a lot of people benefited from having that, not just seeing people, but moving, thinking about what they're doing with their bodies, you know, problem solving, keeping their brains active, filling the void that was the time a lot of people had. Because those people who weren't able to work from home and were furloughed, I think very quickly found out that our lives are kind of engineered in the way that work takes up most of our time. You know, unless you have a surplus of disposable income, you're spending your time earning income so you can survive. Time is very much a luxury, and like anything in excess, it'll kill you. You know, I fucking love cheese, but I guarantee that if I had 3 blocks of it, like, I'd be fucking sick of it. And having too much time on your hands is just as dangerous as not having enough. And you know, balance, like this podcast, like your brand, you know, everything is about balance. Chose a pretty cliche name there, my friend.
Yeah, but I apologize. It comes up nearly every fucking episode, I tell you. Oh, Jesus.
I can imagine. Yeah. But it's very prevalent. And I think a lot of people really struggled with having too much time on their hands, especially when people aren't particularly good at understanding their own emotions. More often than not, they're not very good at speaking and processing all their emotions. Like, it's very much pushed to the side as like a to-do later kind of thing. And then it came to early September, where, bearing in mind I've not been at work this whole time, I work at a primary school. My housemate was high risk, so I'd stayed off work, and I had reconstructive knee surgery on the 1st of September, which obviously meant I had limited mobility. And at the time, from what I understood when I'd spoken to my surgeon, it was going to be a case of, it's going to be a year-long recovery, which is fine, but it was going to be a case of about a month before I could get back to work. And I was like, okay, COVID seems to calm down. If I take a month, we'll be sound. I'll get back into work, just limited mobility, and that's fine. I'll just be careful. And when it came down to it, what actually happened was I had more extensive repairs done than what I'd previously anticipated, and my surgeon had kind of underestimated what my situation was at work, because I work with SMEH children who...
What is that? What does that mean?
So it's basically kids who have social, mental, emotional health issues.
Sure.
So kids who have autism, kids who have behavioral issues, kids who just struggle to be in your neurotypical environment, like a classroom where a teacher is stood at the front and she's speaking at you. You know, something more stimulating needs to be going on, or stimulating in a different way. You know, they can't stay there for long periods of time. And we have 2 in our class, one of whom I work with very closely, one-to-one more often than not. And sometimes it gets a bit hard for him, but he becomes a little bit dangerous to the people around him, like the children that he's with and stuff like that. And he just needs to be removed physically from the classroom. Nothing violent, but in a safe way where he's not compromising the safety of other kids. Bearing in mind, this child is probably about 40 kilos, you know? So picking up a child and removing them safely from a classroom that is very, very small, tight gaps, like, you know, there's lots of scissors going on. Like, I couldn't even stand up, let alone lift another human being for months. So it's come to this point where I was very much stuck, and people whenever I spoke to someone about this, it was a case of, oh, it's locked down, so I guess it's kind of good that you can't really do anything anyway. And it's like, yes, to an extent, those two overlapping was kind of nice, but also you think you can do nothing in lockdown. If you take away your mobility within lockdown, you're literally stuck in the same 6 square meters, then you can really do nothing. It kind of hits you. It's like the third day you've not showered and you can't shower because you've got bandages all over your legs. And it really makes me feel for people who would be in that situation more permanently, people who might have disabilities where their mobility is severely limited at a baseline. It's not a case of they've got 3 months and then they're going to be back up to it. And it's really given me an appreciation for people who might be in that situation more permanently. And I haven't really seen much about that. I'm not involved with any circles that people like that would have much of a voice, just because of the interests I've got is more geared towards people who have full mobility. Jiu-jitsu isn't necessarily discriminatory in that sense. It's just, I'd imagine that if you were to have some sort of disability, it'd be quite intimidating to get into that. Although I know people who do it. There's people all over the internet who do.
Shout out Sam K, one of the best black belts in the UK.
Yep, absolutely. If you're looking for a good jiu-jitsu match, Sam K, I think, frequently makes jokes about his disability. I think he's basically got 2 digits on one arm.
I don't know the extent of his disability.
Let's say he's basically got an arm and a half.
Yeah.
And Sam K had an absolute barn burner with Ben Robson, Spud-Jitsu.
Spud-Jitsu, indeed.
Fantastic match. Everyone, I think, got some phantom pain in their knees watching that match. It was absolutely mental. But yeah, he's a perfect example of how people with disabilities make it work. But people who aren't in jiu-jitsu and haven't found ways to keep themselves active, during a lockdown, I think that's got to be so hard on you mentally, because our physicality and our mentality is very, very interconnected, especially for someone like me. And I think a lot of people in jiu-jitsu experience that. I think anyone who's in any sort of physical sport experiences like a catharsis from the physicality of that sport mentally. I find that, and everyone around me says this, when I've done some jiu-jitsu and I've come back and my body's a little bit tired, that's when I'm at my most reasonable, level-headed, and just emotionally stable. It's really, really that kind of stabilizer for me as someone who's got not a volatile mental history, just not a particularly stable one. I think being in England, being a young lad from a working class family, like, it wasn't the best environment to grow up. It was far from the worst, but I didn't have a huge amount of support. Yeah, shit happens to everyone, and sometimes you're in a situation where a little bit more shit's going to happen to you than someone else. And that was just my situation, and I've completely lost my point, motherfucker.
We were talking about your initial point was about you losing your mobility after the reconstructive surgeries.
Yeah, and I think having lost that stabilizing thing within my life due to lockdown, and then even a case of I couldn't do any physical training, nothing to like really stabilize my mentality. It's just stuck. You really start to downward spiral, like I said, I'm not a particularly social person anyway. If I'm dealing with something, I much prefer to keep it to myself and do things on my own terms at my own speed. I don't like to drag anyone else into my shit, even though I would not recommend that. If I was speaking to someone else, I'd absolutely say do the opposite of that. Even if you were stuck in your ways and it was really, really hard for you to speak to someone, I would 100% of the time speak to someone. I did a psychology degree. I know that's not the sort of behavior I should be exhibiting. I should be looking to change it. It's just personally at this time how I felt the most able to deal with it, because it is a situation where my knee's not going to magically get better by speaking to anyone about it. And in my head, I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to deal with it for now. Everyone's having a hard time. But again, that would not be my advice to anyone else on this planet. I would 100% always say, speak to your friends, speak to your family, get your support network working, because everyone's having a bit of a shit time, speak to people. Which is all we really can do in a time like this, is just speak to people. We can't physically be around them, we can't hug them, we can't kiss them, we can't go out and go to the cinema with people, we can't train with people. So speak to people. If it's the last thing you've got left, just speak to people, get your thoughts out there, don't keep them stuck in your head. Do as I say and not as I do, as the age-old adage goes that is classically shit parenting.
Yeah, Papa George. I mean, to touch on somebody that would be lacking in mobility. Like obviously not around anymore, but my mother would have been a perfect example for that. So she had 2 hip replacements, 2 knee replacements, rheumatoid arthritis all throughout her entire body. She basically had half a spine by the end of her life because arthritis had just worn away the root of her spine so poorly. So you know, she was in that situation like you were, that a shower was like strenuous exercise. Do you know what I mean? Like, so, and that's not to say she didn't shower. Obviously, she fucking
Yeah, of course.
but it's like a shower and then a 3-hour sit down to recover. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the level. And you know, walking up and down the stairs would need a sit down to recover, or looking after my nephew would mean 3 days in bed. And that's not an exaggeration. Do you know what I mean? Like it's so yeah. I mean, I empathize with you entirely, and I think that there's something. This kind of takes me back to the point before where you were saying that I'm, you know, a people person. Like I really don't agree. Like over lockdown, I've witnessed my hermit self creep to the surface once more. And I'm working from home, right? So I'm very fortunate that I'm not furloughed. My partner is furloughed, but you know, if nobody checked me, I could sit at this PC for days and you wouldn't hear a peep out of me. You just wouldn't hear anything because I have conversations with myself in my head. If I have something of interest, I can probably find it on the net. I can play Warzone to my heart's content. I can play RuneScape to my heart's content. I can, you know, record podcasts to my heart's content. And the podcast, I guess, is kind of, you know, I mean, if that's your argument against, is like, oh, well, you do the podcast, right? Like you speak to people all the time. True. I speak to people once a week. I speak to different people once a week, right? Sometimes twice a week if you do the MMA podcast. But predominantly, they're quite selfish endeavors. Like I speak to people that are interesting because that's interesting to me, you know? Like, sure, it's great if people choose to listen to it. That's wonderful. And I've had some incredible feedback, and not vast amounts, but I've had some incredible feedback. And equally, it's great to listen to somebody have an opinion on a conversation that you've had. That's really cool, really, really cool. But it's not the primary reason I did it. The primary reason I did it is because I wanted to have interesting conversations with interesting people. Enter George Huggins. And, you know, the secondary reason was, look, if I am having interesting conversations with other people, maybe other people will find them interesting. Hence, it's a platform. Do you know what I mean? Like, so the extroversion thing. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, let me rephrase what I meant by, or redefine what I meant by people person then, because people person, I guess, is kind of synonymous with this extroverted personality when you use that terminology. What I really meant was you are a person who is good with people, not necessarily extroverted. Yeah, so that's more my misrepresentation of what I mean by people person. But no, I agree actually. I think a lot of people, because we're of a similar age, we're not exactly the same age, but there's not much in it between us. Yeah, but I don't think there's too much in it. I'm 23, you're...
Oh my God, yeah, I'm fucking way older than you, bro.
What are you, 27?
I am 27.
Exactly, that's not that much in it, you know?
Bro, I'm nearly 30, don't.
30? Oh, fuck off. You've got a few years yet, you're fine.
We'll see.
Shout out to Liam, who's old as fuck.
Yeah, agree.
But yeah, I'm very much similar in the sense that I can be a hermit, I can sit, be by myself, stuff like that. But I'd still say that even though you are inclined to be like that, and that's probably where you get a lot of your energy from, because that's kind of how I define introverts and extroverts. I'm not sure that's the literal psychological definition or dictionary definition, but that's how I view it. Is an introvert is someone who gets their energy from being alone and spending time on their own, and an extrovert is probably someone who gets their energy from being around other people, regardless of the context. It doesn't necessarily mean loud or quiet to me. It's just about where you get your energy from, for me anyway, and that's how I'm going to use those terms throughout this conversation. And I'd say you definitely fall more within the introvert category, but I'd still argue that you are a people person in the sense that you are good with people. You can maintain a conversation, you can drive a conversation, and you can understand people in the sense that if someone's coming to you and they're struggling with something, you can sit and have an empathetic but pragmatic conversation with them and genuinely help them and keep that dialogue open for them to come to you at a later date. You know, I'd say that you generally add to people's situation much, much more than you would ever detract, you know, like, and you're thoughtful. I think even though, like you said previously, it's kind of a transactional situation,
Yep.
I think it's very easy to say, oh, I'll make sure to bring something along. And it's like, haha, you know, remember when I said that? And it's like, cool, no one ever speaks about it again. But you actually brought something, you know, and you didn't just go out and fucking buy a bag of squashies. You know, you put some time and effort and thought and care into making, like I say, literally the best cookies I've ever had in my entire fucking life. You know, and you're not a baker. You haven't baked since then. I don't think you probably baked much before that, but you put in that time and effort.
So, I mean, I think you're very kind. I think when people say like, oh, what are your strengths? What are your skills? Like, I don't really have too many, but one of them is I am able to read people relatively well. I equally did somewhat of a psychology A level. I didn't manage to finish it for various reasons, but I started one, and one thing that interests me vastly and always has is people, is the way people operate, is the way that, and this all started subconsciously, unconsciously when I was a child, and I'm sure some of the traits that you have are very, very similar to you. And I think one of the reasons why you are as emotionally adept as you are is because we probably had similar childhoods in some fashion. There'll probably be fables that we can take from our childhood that would be entirely relatable to each other's life history, right? But you know, in the baking thing, like kind of, my mom was a cook, my dad was a chef for a long time, so I had an interest in cooking, I guess. Like, again, very different approaches, and both sent me down different ways. I worked in kitchens as a kid, like work experience and these kind of things, just odd jobs in kitchens. And around the time that I came to Scramble, I was thinking about doing a pop-up bakery. So there's something in London called, oh my God, how have I forgotten what this is called? Oh my God. Street Feast. Thank you. There's something called Street Feast in London, and there's a variety of them across the city, and they all bring independent traders into one place, and you essentially can sell your wares on a Wednesday, I think it is, and then you go somewhere else, right? Like, you can be an independent trader, just turn up, have a license with them, whatever. So I was thinking about applying to do something similar to that, but I just couldn't be bothered to invest the money and time, and equally, I didn't really think that there was a vast amount of reward. I tried to get a voluntary job with them to just help them with their marketing or something like that, but they weren't hiring at the time. But cooking is something that I've done before, but I definitely wouldn't say that I'm anywhere near a prestigious baker or anything. It's just that recipe for cookies is something that I found, and I'd actually worked on relatively religiously for about 6 weeks prior. So again, it's like serendipitous that should fall into my plate. I just had a recipe nailed at that time and brought them. But yeah, I mean, the introversion thing, I think it's interesting you say about energy, because there's something, I hate to use it, but I'm going to use it. Like, the idea of Jungian balance is where a lot of my adult, I guess, I'm 27, I should call myself an adult, where my adult thinking comes from. And that's again, a very, very quick breakdown. Carl Jung was a German psychologist, psychoanalyst, and a little bit of philosopher as well, as is so relatable between the two fields. But he essentially believed that there is accessible extremity to both sides of your emotional capabilities. So he could easily map how you could be Mother Teresa, but Mother Teresa then ends up as part of the Gestapo in the Nazi era, right? And he believes that if you aren't able to place yourself in those situations, then you're not yet equipped with the right emotional intelligence. And what he determines is that the cleanest way to live life is by trying to bridge the gap of both and walk the line of balance. And to be honest, All About Balance is kind of related to Carl Jung. If I've never said that before, but there we are, there it is. Like, the idea of balance and Carl Jung had been bouncing around my head for years, and it became sort of centric to my thoughts. And to your point about introversion, extroversion, energies, it's like you have to be able to meter both. You can't just be only okay in your room on your own, in your own thoughts. You have to be able to be in a room of 50 people with an Adonis of the sport that we practice in the room and not act out, right? Not act in a way that's unaccording to the social norms of the situation you're in. And yeah, you're right. You may need to go home and sit on your own and sweat and recharge your batteries because it was very difficult for you to be there. But having an ability to function in in a multifaceted, multifunctional way is important, and that takes balance.
Absolutely. I think adaptability is something that every single human needs. And when you look at human evolution, adaptability is probably the thing that's got us the furthest.
Primary driver as to why we're alive.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think within every facet of your life, adaptability is something that everyone should strive for. You know, like you say, you can have that 99% of where you spend your time, but when you do go into that 1%, you need to be able to function there. And sometimes you're going to even need to be able to perform at incredibly high standards. You know, like when you talk about professional athletes like rugby players, I wouldn't say that necessarily playing in the World Cup final is exactly where someone would want to be in terms of stress levels. You know, you wouldn't want to be at that stress level for like your entire life because you'd be fucking dead by the age of 23. Yeah. You know, that amount of stress is not what we're designed to function at a consistent amount of time. But you need to be able to step up into that 1% of functionality and take it even further and excel in that 1% space. And that's something that everyone needs. And yours may not, your World Cup final might be doing a 2-hour Zoom call with your boss once a month, you know, for a monthly review of your performance. You know, no one wants to be doing that shit. Like, that shit's pretty grim, you know, especially if you've had a bad month that wasn't necessarily like your fault. Say like there's a global pandemic and your business is selling seats at stadiums, you know, like sometimes life just hits you with shit and you've got to be able to step up into that 1%. You've got to be adaptable. You've got to be able to, I hate to use this fucking tagline, you've got to be able to adapt and overcome.
Yawn. I think there is something about acceptance as well, right? And that's the sort of that's the underlying notion that came through what you were saying when you'd had your reconstructive surgery, is that, yeah, okay, you were in a bit of a shit spot, not the worst spot, right? But in a spot where you weren't actually able to work because of the pandemic, but you weren't able to work because you just had your knee torn apart. Well, put back together, I guess, but
the tearing happened previously.
Yeah, exactly. And there's something that comes with, you can lament and you can speak about it, but that speaking is probably only divisive in its nature, because there's, as you said, there's nothing that's going to put your knee back together quicker. There's nothing that somebody, like, let's say you spoke to your housemate, right? And you spoke to them for 3 hours about the struggles of not having a functioning knee. But at the end of that conversation, the outcome, the advice is going to be what? Heal faster. So having an acceptance of your situation will only allow you to compute things faster. Like, I'll give an example that happened today. So we're getting the dog, right? The dog went for its final vet checks today, injections and all this sort of stuff. We get a call. There's a problem with the dog. The problem with the dog is that the dog has what's called an umbilical hernia. So essentially, that I found out in the last couple of hours, because I was researching drastically, is when the dog's umbilical cord falls off, sometimes the hole that is left doesn't quite heal properly. The skin folds over, but underneath there's a small hole, and an intestine or an organ or something could poke out through that hole, just like a regular hernia, right? Now, obviously, Imogen, floods of tears, we're not going to get the dog's broken, blah, blah, blah. But initial acceptance of that situation is, okay, we've got a problem. What can we do about it? Well, what we can do about it is, we called the vet. We had a chat with the vet. We had a chat with Imogen's mother, who's had bulldogs forever. And I did my research, although very, very quick research, and we came to the conclusion, dog's going to be grand. We're getting the dog tomorrow, right? So, you know, like, having acceptance of a situation, and okay, this is just buying a dog, it's nothing as severe as one of your legs not working, but having an acceptance of a situation, and that just allows you to compute at such a better function, right?
Absolutely. And I think this is where the distinguishment between do as I say and not as I do comes in, really. Like, it's not as quite as simple as that. I think
Nothing
the
ever
reason
is.
no, nothing ever is. I think the reason that I would 100% of the time advise people to speak about it is because a lot of the trouble that people would have in situations like this is getting to that acceptance point. The reason that I don't necessarily need to speak about it in a situation that I'm in is because I'm already at it. But if you're not at that point, if you're not at the if you don't have the capability to instantaneously process the situation that you're in, and you need to bounce it off of someone, you need to reflect, you need to get outside perspectives, you need to just vent, you need to just complain about it, which is super, super important. People are always telling people not to complain. It's like, fuck that. Life shit sometimes. Have a rant about it. You'll feel better. Go fucking get a pillow, scream into it, punch it, do what you want, have a long shower, go for a run, headbutt something really, really soft.
Not my dog.
Not the dog. The dog is very soft, but you cannot headbutt the dog.
Correct.
The dog can headbutt you.
Yeah,
you can't headbutt the dog.
Once.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But you need to reach that point of acceptance, and if you're already at it, grand. That's at that point where, like my situation, stuff's just going to be shit for a while. That's okay. Life is never quite as be all end all as it seems in the moment, and you just need to kind of step back and realize that, and that's kind of what I've been doing with my knee. Don't get me wrong, that like that's not a solution. It's not, oh, okay, suddenly I'm fine all of the fucking time. You're gonna wake up days and be like, fucking hell, like I wish I could just run up a hill. You'll have dreams where you fantasize about just sprinting, just full pace for no reason. You just want to run, or jumping, or being able to do a full squat, or let alone fucking shooting a double leg on someone. Like you will, and you'll get sad about it, and there'll be times in your life where, like, you've got to weigh up, like, I want to shower because I feel like I need to shower, but I'm also well aware that my leg is pretty fucking tired and I just really can't be arsed. You have those stupid little disagreements with yourself. Like, you're gonna have hard days, and this is obviously a very, very specific anecdote to me in my situation, but this applies everywhere. Every time life throws something at you, you're gonna have these same sort of situations. Conceptually, you've just got to extrapolate your individual variables and apply these concepts to that. But definitely start with anything it takes to get you to the point of acceptance, understanding that your situation isn't necessarily going to change, and all you can really do is make the best of it, unless you can change it, of course. Like, if you can change it and you just know it's going to be a slog, fucking just whatever it takes to get you motivated and working towards that.
Do you know who Alan Watts is?
I do not.
So after this podcast, I will offer you an opportunity to go and have a listen to Alan Watts. So Alan Watts is the next kind of guy that's bouncing around my head for a period of time. It has been for a little while, but not to any strenuous study. He's dead now, but he was a British philosopher. And he studied sort of Eastern philosophy, Taoist philosophy, Buddhism, these kinds of things. I know Buddhism isn't a philosophy, but you know what I mean. And he speaks all the time about this sort of notion of acceptance and being able to get to that position, and the routes that he uses, or the routes that is used to get there. And it's something that's drastically apparent now and will continue to be drastically apparent. I think the thing that lockdown showed us a lot of things. I think one of them is that there is both community and anti-community everywhere, right? It's that if ever we needed an understanding that humans are tribalistic, lockdown is that. It showed us that we are built for, on some level, being social, whether we are introverts, extroverts, whatever. And I think it showed us as well that there is absolutely no need for office-based working for 75% of the workforce that go to offices.
At least not all of the time.
Yeah, I mean, at least not. I mean, could you tell me a reason why you'd need to go to an office?
Purely for the reason that physical socialization is really, really beneficial over a long term in small amounts. I wouldn't say that it has to be 5 days a week, but personally, I'm not of the opinion necessarily that society should be striving towards people working 5 days a week anyway. I think in 200 years, it'd be nice to have a 3-day week, and call me a socialist if you want. I'll call you a fucking idiot. We can go back and forth. And if you think socialist is an insult, then that's fine by me. You know, that says a lot about what you think. And I'm not saying I am a socialist. I'm just saying that if you use someone's political standpoint as an insult, you clearly don't understand their political standpoint.
I mean, I can give my opinion on the working week thing and the socialist thing, I guess.
Let's stick to the working week. Socialism, capitalism, communism. That's a whole other bag of cats. That
I don't even think I understand socialism, capitalism, and what's the other one you mentioned? Communism. I don't think I understand them enough to really give an opinion.
I don't think most people do. I don't think I do. I don't think the majority
really
of people understand them. It's like when people throw around the term psychopath and sociopath. Most people don't even know that sociopath isn't a psychologically recognized term, and psychopath isn't even in most of the diagnostic manuals for psychology. Those aren't terms that are frequently used. Psychopathy is something that's more common. Sociopathy was something that was never really a thing, but just got picked up by pop culture. You know, socialism, communism, capitalism, none of those things are really fully understood by most of the people that like to throw around those terms.
I agree.
You know, and none of them are black and white either. Like, your socialism's different to my socialism. My communism's different to your communism. Like,
yeah,
it's so fucking hard to quantify and have a conversation with, especially when people aren't willing to turn around and go, actually, I don't know that much about this, because no one wants to look like an idiot. Well, here's to all you fucking idiots.
Again, for those of you listening, George has decided to put both of the middle fingers up. But yeah, on the point of working week, like, anywhere in London takes an hour to get to, right? It's a really weird thing, but I only live 7 miles from my office and it takes me an hour. Anywhere you go to, it just takes about an hour. It's real strange, but I don't know what it is, but that's how London seems to work, right? And so yeah, an hour in to the office, an hour out. Generally, I'd be going to the gym, so it's like 40 minutes to the gym and then another 25 minutes home. But that is, again, as you say, it's an extra 3 hours, an hour and a half-ish on your day that you didn't need to make. Now, I get up just before my first morning meeting. I'm sat at my desk. I'm there, and I've saved 3 hours. Now, does it mean that I work longer? Actually, no, it doesn't. In the 5 days, I find it very hard, unless you're my boss, Eric, who's in meetings literally from the time he wakes up to the time he goes to sleep. But that is an entirely different ballgame. I can get my day-to-day job done probably inside 3 days relatively comfortably. Now, of course, there will always be extenuating circumstances where something breaks, and on a day, whatever it is, and somebody needs to be there to fix it. Fine, no problems, I can do that. But I agree with you, and I want to offer you this model from somebody else that I work with named Colin, who refuses to come on the podcast, but I really wish he would, because he's a fucking...
Hey, fuck you, Colin. Yeah, come on the podcast.
Come on the podcast. My plan is to get him really drunk and then just put a microphone in front of him and just see what happens.
You're not on the podcast, but here's a microphone.
And some headphones. Put these on. Thank you.
Yeah.
But he said that the way that he would like things to work is that everything is objective based. So however long it takes you to complete your objective, and whenever you want to complete your objective, is up to you. So let's say I say to you, okay, George, your objective is to put 15 posts out on social media within 30 days, right? And I want to get a following of 10%, positive 10%, right? Cool. It's on you to make those posts whenever you want to make them, however you want to do them. But at the end of that 30 days, I need 15 posts and I need a 10% increase in following. Now, you could be a social media genius and you make them in 7 days and you fuck around for 3 weeks doing whatever you want. Right?
Exactly. Yep.
Or the other option is somebody says to you, okay, my job, for instance, fixing broken things. For every broken thing that I fix, I get paid. Now, it'll be a nominal figure, of course, but being paid to complete a task rather than being paid a transaction of time plus tasks is something I agree with you that I think we'll see a big change in the future. And I think lockdown is probably the catalyst for it, to be honest.
I thought it was as well. But from what I've heard, a lot of people, and humans are great at this, humans are fucking fantastic at ignoring history. We are just the best at being ignorant. And it's like you could slap a fact sheet, staple it to our fucking forehead, highlight it, and we'd be like, that's a real nice bird over there, you know, looking through the top corner of the plain A4 paper that's not covered in facts. We are amazing at that. And I think people have short memories in terms of how things made them feel, even though that everyone you speak to will tell you memory is stronger for how you felt and emotions, because it is in a lot of cases. Like if you actively recall a memory, if you think back to a situation and reflect on how it made you feel, you will remember it quite strongly. But unless you do that active reflection, you're not going to give a fucking shit how it made you feel, because we're designed to forget stuff. You know, if you think back to a situation where you were in physical pain, can you remember that physical pain? No, that's a biological feature designed to make sure you don't continuously feel pain all the time when you accidentally remember stuff. Imagine that. You wake up in the middle of the night, it's like, fuck, remember that time I broke my leg? I'm feeling that right now. This is so inconvenient. There's nothing I can do about it except stop thinking about it. All right, cool. You know, like we're not designed to remember that feeling unless we proactively seek it out, and a lot of people aren't very good at that reflection, you know. And I think lockdown's a really good example of that. We've gone from everyone making banana bread and talking about this really nice future where there's a 3-day working week that, you know, all you boomers can say isn't working hard enough, or fuck you, housing prices were like 10% of what they are now back then, so again, double fuck you. We were all thinking about that. Everyone was talking about it, and now everyone's just going back to the office for 5-day weeks. I know maybe 2 people that aren't back in an office pretty much the same way that they were before. You know, people now are talking about the benefits of being in an office, which I respect. I think is great. There are benefits to being in an office with people. I just think it has to be moderated. I think we need to stop fluttering between these 2 fucking extremes of no hours in the office and all the hours in the office. Because like you say, you end up working a 5 to 9 day that turns into a fucking 6 till 6 day pretty quickly, because travel, all of that sort of stuff is not accounted for in your wages, is not accounted for when you sign up for a job in terms of like how much time you're going to have outside of that. I think we need to look back at how we were at the beginning of lockdown, how people were feeling, and just work from that to more of a middle ground than what we are at now, which is just going back to exactly how we were, which is what so many people do.
So the way that I think that this is going to happen, and the reason why I say I think lockdown is the catalyst, is everything happens in increments. Very, 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 very rarely does something happen and everything changes on a pinhead. From one mover to action, global action, not often do we see it. A pandemic, for instance. We found out there's a pandemic and Boris was like, it's grand. You're going to be grand. And then 3 weeks later, he's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to have to bring the country to a halt. Italy, the same. The US, the same, right? So even when there's something as vast as a global pandemic that comes across from wherever it comes and the world's in upside down, Boris still wants to go to the pub. So do you know what I mean? Like incremental changes. Now, I think that there's the people at your age, right? So people that are a little bit younger than me by 5 years, cry.
Oh,
Those people, whilst I agree that memories are short, memories aren't short enough that the office life hasn't been ingrained in you enough so that when lockdown is coming, will come again, probably. The understanding of working from home, like you're right that people forget history, but in the same vein, people also get to a situation and they're like, hold on, this is way better than before.
Yeah, that's true.
And you know, the analytical side of people, like I know when I spoke to my bosses and the first time lockdown stopped and they were like, oh, we're going to go back to the office. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not coming. Why? Because I don't want to. Like, I would be happy doing 4 days a week here and 1 day a week in the office. Now, that's obviously highly favored towards me, but my argument is if I can do my job, if you have a problem with the output that I'm giving and you think it would be better in the office, fine, let's do that. Let's try that. But if my output is something that's still pleasing you, what does it matter where I do it from?
And I think the way you phrase that is really important as well. You said it's highly favorable towards you.
Yes.
But that doesn't necessarily mean it's at a detriment to the company.
Correct.
Which is a win-win. But for
Correct.
some reason, people assume because there's favor one side, there has to be detriment the other way. You know, there isn't necessarily.
Correct.
Like you say, performance reviews. If there was a dip in performance, that's a different story. You know, the company's now losing what they had, which in contractual terms isn't exactly fair. You know, and that would be an issue. You know, they'd either have to implement something that means that you have a higher performance at home, or they bring you back into the office for higher frequencies, you know.
Yes. And, you know, the problem that I'm going to have is my entire the business model of my business is buying buildings and making them office space. So it's kind of antithetical to the idea of the business to have people not working in an office when you're a business that makes offices. But, you know, we are where we are. I'll have that argument at a different day. But, you know, I agree. And I think, I mean, I have this grandiose theory that everyone's going to be living in a VR world within 250 years, and that the idea of human physical bodies will cease to exist within about 5 lifetimes. But I think that there is something to be said for the analytical mind of a generation that is willing to speak up on issues. And I find that, you know, the future of business is the generation of 17 to 23-year-olds now that are having these ideas, starting these businesses. And these businesses, I suspect, will be fluid in the notion of where it is held. Because let me give you this, for the fucking stupidity of the people of my age and older. We're in a lockdown, right? How much do you think rent in London is a month?
Oh, what? Easy 1,200, something like that?
Oh, that's to live. Office space, how much do you
Oh, rent?
Yeah.
Fuck knows.
A lot is the answer.
Yep. I can see that. That makes sense.
The company I work for is a FTSE 100 company. For people that don't know what the FTSE 100 is, it's basically the 100 most highly performing companies in the UK, right? So it's a £1 billion company with a workforce of like 200 people. So 300 people maybe. That tells you the level of money that is being generated through the rent that property is bringing in London, right? So it's lots and lots and lots of money. When I spoke to my boss and I was like, this is the very start of lockdown, I said to him, I'm slightly worried about the company. Like, do you think it's going to survive? Because think about it. If you're a company that is now working from home predominantly, why would you pay rent to a company for an office space that you're not using? And if this lockdown at the start, we thought it was going to go on for ages and ages, right? Longer than it has done already. I'm like, well, if we're not getting paid rent, how do I get paid? How do you get paid? How does the company survive? And he took that away, and we talked about it over and over. And after the first lockdown, what happened was utterly, utterly perplexing to me. So instead of companies going back and saying to my company, look, we want to reduce the office space we have. We're going to have more remote working. We're going to have this, that, the next thing. They came in and asked for double the office space.
So that they could socially distance people, I'm guessing.
Correct. Sorry? Like imagine sitting there with your board of directors and being like, I tell you what, I know that times are really hard and everyone's struggling from a business perspective to make money. The economy's having a bit of a dip and whatever. Let's spend double the rent money. I couldn't fucking believe it. I could not fucking believe it. And I remember saying to Eric, my boss, and I like laughed and I was like, people are fucking idiots. Like what are you doing? And obviously it's great for the company that I work for, because now they have more square units of office space being occupied by more tenants. That's brilliant for them. But it's ludicrous when you think about it logically.
But again, see, I agree about the incremental changes. I agree about how this could potentially be like a long-term catalyst for those incremental changes. Absolutely. And I think generationally is when the changes happen most, you know, when it's no longer your Bojos and your fucking Donald Trumps or Joe Bidens, whoever it is that are in power. It's people who have lived in the society that we're in currently actually coming into power. That's when
Do you
some
think
of the
that's going to
changes.
happen?
Don't know, but I
Yeah.
agree that in theory that's where some of the changes would
Sure.
occur
Sure.
incrementally. But this exactly represents my point earlier of, you know, people are so willing to double down on what they think they know compared to reflect and change for something that might be a little bit scary, that, you know, it's hard to have too much faith in some people sometimes. You know, I was speaking to someone the other day about it, and, you know, as much as I say I hate people, which I do, some people are fucking assholes. Fundamentally, I'm a
Sean
human
McGuinness.
being. Yeah, fuck you, Sean. Fuck you. I'm a human being, so I can't hate people all that much. You know, I want humanity to succeed and to live on this planet well. Quite frankly, I wouldn't wish ill upon individual people. But man, like, people are fucking dumb. And I was having this conversation with someone about how astoundingly stupid some people are with a friend literally 2 days ago. And it comes up all the time because you just constantly see examples of where people haven't taken the time to just think. And we're exposed to it all the time. You know, stupidity is the gag and the butt of many, many comedy jokes and shows like Love Island and Jeremy Kyle that like to basically just present poverty porn where people haven't had an education and then throw these people up as circus freaks because of society that failed them and laugh at them. You know, like we see that all the time. I don't think that's funny. I think that's fucking sad. I think that's really, really upsetting. And I was on YouTube browsing the absolute depths, and for some reason, YouTube was like top British TV moments or something like that, most iconic moments. And I have to assume this was Love Island. I'm sorry if it's not, and to all you Love Islanders who really love the show, great, enjoy it. I'm glad you have fun with it. But personally, I find it just not that great. And it was this group of girls sat around talking about Brexit when Brexit was first put out on the table. Now, Brexit's a pretty contentious and complicated subject that I don't really understand fully and would never claim to understand fully. In fact, I would claim that I understand it maybe about 3%, you know? But here's the extent of their understanding. One of them turned around and was like, we're leaving the EU. And most of them didn't know what the EU was, which is good. And then one of them said they're cutting down welfare and something like that. They said they're cutting welfare and something else. And one of them turned around and said, does that mean we won't have any trees anymore? Because this girl had used the term cutting down welfare. She has just assumed that cutting down just meant they're cutting down trees and we're not going to have any trees anymore in the UK because we're leaving the EU. And hilarious for about 3 seconds, you know, really, really funny. And they go on to talk about how they're not going to go to Spain anymore because they're leaving the EU and they love their holidays and all that, blah, blah, blah. Everyone has a laugh. But what that really represents is like a serious failure on society's part to educate these people. Yeah, 100%. These people are so withdrawn from education, be it, don't get me wrong, individuals are hard to teach, you know. No kid really wants to be at school, and the kids that do are a joy to teach, you know, because it's lucky. It's lucky the kids want to be in school. But it's hard, you know, but it is society's job to keep those kids engaged, to give them other routes, you know, to keep them being like informed and useful members of society. And the reason that that is no longer informed and useful is because our society is democratic. We vote. You know, if these people are voting or not feeling like they can vote because they don't even understand what the fuck the world is doing, like that's a problem. You know, you now get a representation of about 60% of people who've been educated in private educations, or people who are like the upper echelons of public education who have had access to proper education, who've had parents who've had the time and the finances to sit down with their kids at the end of the day and do homework, keep them engaged, reward them with monetary or physical objects that keep them engaged in school. Like I know people who got £100 per A star at GCSE. You know, we do 13 GCSEs. That's £1,300 just packed away for your first fucking driving lesson. You know, like that's mental. And people are like, oh, you know, but that's parents individually doing nice stuff for their kids. It absolutely is. And I would never begrudge kids getting that or parents doing that. I think that's fantastic. Encourage your kids to want to learn and do well. But what you've got to understand is that when there is like 3% of parents who are able to do that, and then 97% who can't even come close to giving a kid like a tenner for an A star, and probably won't give them an tenner for an A star because they didn't get any, you know, like that's a serious problem. That's a really, really big problem within wider society when we're looking at the product of that on TV and just going, that's great comedy, you know, because people are not even understanding what it represents. And I get that people need escapism. I get that people need to be able to just laugh at situations sometimes. It's a coping mechanism. I do it all the time. You know, I'll fucking like accidentally walk into a door. It's like, that really fucking hurt. Am I going to cry about it? No, I'm going to laugh. It was stupid. Obviously, I'm going to laugh because there's nothing you can do to change it. And to cry about it would be kind of pointless, which is exactly what I'm doing. I'm sitting here bitching about a situation that I have no input on how to change. And I'm sorry for that. Sue me. I'm an idealist. Fuck you again.
I mean, okay, so there's a lot to unpack in those statements, obviously. And I think that there's a couple of things that we can pick out really easily. And the first is the education system. I don't know if and again, we use the word democratic, we use the word democracy, and I don't think anyone has a clear grip on what definition that the UK is using for the word democracy. The reason I say that is the US election and the UK election are both supposedly democratic, but they work in very different ways. They have multiple layers of nuance that I don't understand. I haven't researched, I haven't looked at, but I do know that they're different.
For example, I'm assuming the Electoral College springs to mind, which is something
Exactly.
I'd never heard of until this election.
Exactly, right? So there's bountiful ways that you can be democratic, and that causes problems. In the same way that if we then bring that down to a much more minute scale, you said earlier that you think I'm a people person, and then we had a rationalization of what we determined the meaning to be for people person. So when you have a one-to-one conversation, there's a one-to-one mapping of your ideals and your definition for words, and that's relatively simple because we can do it. But when you're determining the word democratic to a population of 350 million people, that becomes more difficult. And in the same vein, when we're talking about an education system, like I'm not sure that the UK is adopting the best method of democracy. I don't know what the best method of democracy is, but when a system of democracy is set up, so as you say, the electorate or the people that are voting are predominantly people that are conditioned to think in one of two ways, right? Either red or blue, rather than having an open and inclusive thought process and either ending up at red or blue or green or orange or whatever the color of their team is. That is a problem. And I think that there are systemic failures in society. There are systemic failures to the way that people are educated. And I think that a lot of that is to do with finance, as we've talked about, but it's also about accessibility, right? Like there was a program that I watched on a telly the other day, and it's called Holiday Swap, right? You ever watched this thing?
Heard of it, never watched it.
Exactly the same ilk. It's let's show how poor people are in comparison to how rich people are. So essentially, there was a kid in London who had a really wealthy family. He would go on holiday 5-6 times a year to beautiful places, top of the range places, top of the range hotels, whatever. He had a watch collection that was roughly about 400 grand. He'd got all the beautiful clothes, etc., right? And he went on holiday with a family that had to save for a year to pay for their £600 camping trip, right? So he went there and he turned up with his Gucci and his Prada and this and that and the next thing. And they were talking to him, and obviously there was the sound bites and the beautiful clips that they can do where he pulls out this credit card and it's got more money than they've ever seen in their life as the max out and whatever. But he said something really interesting, and that was the dad sat there and he was like, well, you know, you went to Oxford, right? And he was like, yes, I went to Oxford. And the dad was like, well, my kids can never go to Oxford because we can't afford to pay for them to go and this and that. And the kid made a really good point. And it was that actually he was like, there's scholarships that you can apply for. And there's scholarships that you can work towards where your kid can be paid to go and do these things. And the parents were like, we've never been told about that. And that really hit home to me. It's an accessibility problem, you know, like education is available, especially in this day and age where, look, don't fucking believe everything you read on Wikipedia or YouTube. But you spoke earlier about dealing with children that have problems functioning for long periods of time in a normal, quote unquote, classroom scenario. Traditional, yeah, beautiful word, thank you. In a traditional classroom scenario. But that kid may respond really well to a YouTube class or some presenter that has props and presentations and lights and sounds and these things, right? It doesn't make them stupid that they can't function or don't function well in a traditional classroom. It just means they have an accessibility problem. And this takes me to, this is a big leap. Stay with me. It's a big leap.
Okay.
This takes me to Neuralink. Have you heard of Neuralink?
Is this the Elon Musk thing?
This is the Elon Musk thing. So Neuralink.
I've not heard anything apart from the fact that it's the Elon Musk thing.
Okay,
so treat me like an idiot.
So there's two phases. There's multiple phases, but two main phases. The first phase is that they're going to be implanting a computer chip into your brain, and it will send electromagnetic pulses to various parts of your body that will, if they are damaged, repair them, essentially. So they've shown this working on, I think, a pig that had like a broken leg or something. They put the chip in, and the pig could essentially, the brain would interact with the software. The software would understand that the pig's leg had a problem, and it would send electrical pulses. The leg starts working. Grand. Amazing. All this is wonderful stuff, right? The second phase is that your brain, your frontal cortex will have an opportunity to interact with a Google, for instance, and the only bandwidth problem you will have is how fast you can think. The rate of information transfer would be millions of times faster than what we can type with our thumbs, right? Now think about that in terms of education. It's almost like plugging yourself into the matrix, right? Where you want to learn something. Well, there are millions of opportunities and millions of different avenues for you to learn something. And all you have to do to access it is think about it. And these are my thoughts about how incrementally, like, of course, there's so much room for damage in this sort of scenario. But if we're being truly an idealist here, the rate of intelligence a lot of the time comes from the rate of accessibility. Accessibility could be finances, it could be teachers, it could be the ability of teachers, it could be the intelligence capacity of a human. But my point here is if we make things entirely accessible, I believe that more people will adopt them. And that would in turn change the things that we're talking about from an electorate perspective, which may mean that you don't have a Bojo, you don't have somebody that's come from Eton College. You know, the stats for the prime ministers that have been to Eton College is absolutely incredible. It's a good like 83% or something. And
it's pretty nuts.
It's pretty nuts. But my thoughts are about accessibility and those.
100%. I agree. I absolutely 100% agree. I think accessibility is something that is such a large umbrella term for all of the things that we have been discussing in the last 10 minutes. You know,
Indeed.
Everything that I have offered in terms of access to education is just accessibility, is just people being able to get to it. And that's a really good example of someone who doesn't even know that a scholarship exists, you know, because scholarships are wildly competitive. So not even do they not know that they exist, they've not been geared up to have a child who is going to be competitive enough to get a scholarship. You know, like, let's just put it in athletic terms. Let's talk about rugby, for example. Well, let's use jiu-jitsu. More people probably understand jiu-jitsu. Let's say you've got...
I'd say rugby. Nobody fucking knows about jiu-jitsu.
If you were to talk about a 6'6", 100-kilo guy who's maybe 17, right, compared to your average 17-year-old. There's just no competition. You know, they have height requirements for certain positions. Like, I've got actual friends who were some of the best rugby players in East Anglia, which is kind of the area I was from, far better than the people that I would say they lost out to for their position, skill-wise, but just physically not as big, you know. And I'm not saying that you can feed a child to grow 6'6", but I am saying that you can definitely encourage a healthier body composition if you have the time to feed that child, get them exercise, take them swimming lessons, all that sort of stuff. You know, like, opportunity is in accessibility, and accessibility extends far beyond the reach of just finance or anything. I use finance because it's probably a situation that I can speak to from a more personal place. You know, it's just the first one that comes to mind for me.
Sure.
But in terms of accessibility, like, you could be the richest person in the world but have parents that have no time for you, you know.
Yeah.
And have no time to bother taking you to these extracurricular activities. Like, accessibility is absolutely one of the major problems. Neuralinks, I think that's a really, really interesting suggestion. I think from someone who studied psychology a little bit, it definitely brings to mind my first question is the difference between having access to the information, being able to learn the information, you know, like, how would that integrate? Like, could someone ask you a question and you're instantly able to answer it? Yes, potentially. Could you apply that in terms of a practical situation? I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't really know how that would work in terms of translating from an access to a line of text to being able to physically direct your body to follow that line of text adeptly.
I mean, that depends. And this kind of just deepens into my thoughts about how we're going to become less and less human, quote unquote, traditionally human. And that's, I think that it's all to do with how the code is written, right? Because if you are able to learn, like, let's take Google Ads, Google Marketing, right? We could, we have this conversation now. If your phone is next to you,
which it is, because everyone's phone is next to them,
right? It is almost certain that at some point when you do a Google search in the near future, something that we'll speak about will come up.
100%, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah.
Right. So Google is learning in some fashion about who you are as a person, what your interests are, etc., etc., etc. There is no, it's just, again, an accessibility issue to extrapolate out learning about somebody's interests to learning about how somebody learns. If a chip is inside of your brain and there is code that is able to recognize when information goes from just information to learning to an attribute, right? Then you can determine the optimal method of which somebody learns and then apply that.
A lot of variables, lots of variables, like
all
neurotypicality.
All code is variables, right? And,
absolutely, 100%. But what my only, not concern, because we're not at the point that this is even really like close to being integrated into society in the next 50 years, I would safely bet this is not going to be integrated for at least 50 years into mainstream consumption.
Mainstream consumption, maybe, because I think it will be too expensive for mainstream consumption, but I think it will be there. In the same way,
I also think sorry, I was going to say, I also think if you look at any sort of software release in any field whatsoever, like,
hello Windows,
yeah, jobs exist all over the world literally to fix all the fucking coding errors that have occurred everywhere. You know, I think 50 years is probably not long enough to resolve all of those coding issues. And I think early adopters are going to be experiencing those coding issues. We get hardware failures all the fucking time from some of the top developers. You know, we get misrepresentations of performance from top hardware components all over the world constantly. I don't think it's going to be in the next 50 years. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You know, I'm more than happy to admit, like, I was wrong about estimating when a Neuralink was going to be integrated into mainstream society. I'm no expert on that. Like, no shame in that. But man, like, in terms of how you would account for different neurotypicalities, I think that's borderline impossible, purely because we have so little understanding of psychology and how the brain functions at the minute as a baseline. I think writing a piece of code to account for variables that you don't know what the variables you're working with are. I don't think any code could really do that effectively. Yes, you can get AI learning. Yes, you can get code that would learn on the fly, but then you're getting code to generate code in theory, right?
That's what
And in
happens right
theory,
now.
yeah, in theory, computers don't make mistakes when they're generating code. In theory, definitely is going to be mistakes, not in terms of it doesn't function exactly how the computer designed it to function,
Yeah,
but that function isn't going to be fit for purpose.
sure.
That's where the mistake occurs,
100%. And I think the way I think the adoption works is people will adopt Neuralink in almost a read-only setting, right? So it just
Yeah,
becomes
that's a good way of putting it.
one massive data harvest, right? And what's probably going to happen on the back of that data is unbelievable leaps and bounds in the understanding of psychology and the understanding of how the brain works. Because if you can plug a neuron, because that's what it is essentially, the electrical wires are acting as neurons, right? So if you can plug more neurons into the brain and have the brain, if the brain accepts those as neurons, right, and doesn't reject them as some fucking wire, the data that you'll be able to interpret, if we know how to interpret the data, that is, will be drastic. And then from there, that's when you're going to see the biggest rise of the right model rather than the read-only model.
Yeah, I think it also offers some interesting opportunities for people with conditions like epilepsy, where they have like neuroelectrical irregulations in the brain. Adding something that's basically just going to be conducting and reading the electricity in the brain at all times and understanding kind of any sort of fluctuations within it could be super, super useful. I think applications like that in terms of early adoption are probably much, much more realistic and practical.
Well, that was phase one, right? Phase one is almost, it's a medical enhancement. That's the idea, that it will help. Because think about it, from as you've just said, from an epilepsy thing where it's an electrical malfunction in the brain, if you've got a neuron that can regulate electrical functions in the brain, then epilepsy kind of ceases to exist in a way,
Yeah. I am curious about the pig in terms of the leg working. Could you just explain to me a little bit more about what was considered the leg working and the damage that was done previously, if you know?
So I don't know the details of exactly what the damage was done, but the way that they made it sound is that the leg just did not function whatsoever. The pig couldn't pick the leg up, couldn't put it back down, couldn't bend the leg, etc., etc.
Okay.
Neuralink was turned on. The pig could bend the leg, move the leg, stand on the leg, put weight on the leg.
See, that's a problematic amount of information for me because...
And me, but...
Yeah, absolutely, of course. Because that could so easily be misrepresented. I'd love to look into it and find out a little bit more what happened.
They did. I'll see if I can find the presentation that they did, and I'll put it in the show notes if I do find
it. I think that'd be really, really beneficial. Just because in terms of what you're talking about so many different scenarios there. Let's just cover a couple of them. In terms of if it's a case of there's like a brain section that isn't responding correctly and the leg biologically is absolutely fine to do the work that it's been designed to do, but it just needs the electrical impulses being sent to, much like you would integrate like artificial arms and stuff like that, that like neural link to move fingers and stuff like that, the nerve response. That's one thing. If you're talking about getting the brain to stimulate the production and the distribution of stem cells to repair an injury within the leg correctly,
that's different.
That's a different thing. And now if you're talking about those two things combined, because obviously within terms of injury, if you were missing a limb for like 6 years and then suddenly the limb just came back, you wouldn't necessarily have like immediate control and fine motor control of it. And then again, it becomes more complicated when you talk about if the leg was injured, but you like neurologically hardwire the pig to be able to use it anyway through the injury. Like you and I both know firsthand that it is absolutely 100% doable to have like a pretty major injury and just continue through sheer grit and mental, like just hardness, just being a tough lad. Like, for example, when I blew my knee out in the first instance, I completely tore through my PCL. Fuck that. Let's not even use that. Thiago Santos in the UFC against John fucking Jones. That man blew his ACL, PCL,
Both of them.
LCL, MCL, and tore his meniscus, and continued to fight one of the most dominant champions in lightweight history, potentially ever. And I mean potentially ever in terms of potentially the next 100 years as well. John Jones, massive arsehole. Not a massive fan of him personally. Indisputably one of the hardest motherfuckers in the UFC.
Yeah, sure.
And the guy just continued to fight. He didn't have full usability of the leg, but he managed to put more weight on it than 99% of people in the world would have been able to do. I tell you for a fucking fine fact, if I blew out every single ligament of those 4 major ligaments in my knee, I'd be taking a real quick sit down. I'm telling you that for free. And I'm pretty sure you would. I'm pretty sure Liam would. Exactly. That's insane. And that's all from just brain work, mental capacity. And if you're talking about that in the context of the pig, like I wouldn't say that's it's progress. It's absolutely progress, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily useful progress in terms of shipping it today. It's useful progress in terms of looking at where they're going in the future. But again, I still think 50 years at least. And I'm no expert, so don't quote me on that. If you do quote me on that, like fucking BJJ Heroes loves to misquote people, or like Jiu-Jitsu Times and people like that, then fuck you. You know, I'll go full Keenan, I'll do an Instagram live, and I'll explain it all about why I actually said so. But yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting topic of debate. I think it has some borderline magical applications for the future, 100%, especially if you can integrate that with like artificial limbs, like people who've lost limbs and now need fine motor movements. Like you'd increase accessibility by a millionfold, essentially.
What it becomes is it becomes that the only thing that isn't reproducible is the lifespan of the body, or the lifespan of the brain, sorry. Because if you have a piece of kit in your brain that can tell your brain to just repair everything, that's essentially immortality of a physical form. Do you know what I mean? And on the point, I just want to finish the last accessibility point on learning and all this sort of stuff, is the thing that I think we should be moving towards as much as possible is the equality of opportunity, not the equality of outcome.
You're talking about equity. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about, let's say the Oxford thing, right? Every child in the UK or the world, whatever, should have the opportunity to apply to Oxford, whether it be via a scholarship or whatever. However, we shouldn't say every child should be eligible to go to Oxford. And we shouldn't say because they're poor, they should go to Oxford. No. It should be, if you are willing to put the absolute amount of effort in to get to a level that meets the standards of an Oxford entrant, regardless of whether you're the richest person in the world or the poorest person in the world, you should have the opportunity to do so. Mm-hmm. So the equality does not detriment away from the work. It only gives you the opportunity to complete the work.
100%. I 100% agree. I think that's what equal opportunity should truly be representative of. 100%. That's not to say that I don't believe people should have equality in terms of like, you should have less food because you worked less hard to get into Oxford, you know, as some people like to counter that argument with, like, by playing devil's advocate, you know, like, newsflash for anyone, if you want to play devil's advocate, it's not just a free pass to be a cunt, just for anyone who didn't know. So
being great. Oh, Run the Jewels t-shirt, I respect it.
A friend got this for me not too long ago, and it is a wonderful t-shirt. I can't remember where he got it from. I don't think it was an official Run the Jewels thing, because Run the Jewels have this annoying thing where they're partnered with this incredibly expensive retailer that does like Rick and Morty shit as well. But they have like really nice stuff, but it's like £60 t-shirts. Right. So I was like, I'm not gonna touch that. But this I can work with. This is pretty nice. One thing actually.
Go on. No, you go first. No, you go first.
Fuck. No, not doing it. Not doing it.
One thing I was going to pivot on is I know I don't think we've had this conversation in depth. I know we talked about it in the back of Liam's car, but I want to talk to you about tattoos, because obviously you are relatively heavily tattooed at this point. Yeah,
I wouldn't say
arms.
heavily. I have my 2 forearms done. I've got a thigh. I was on the way to being heavily tattooed, but then I got broke. I got obsessed with jiu-jitsu, and every time you get a tattoo, you have to take time off jiu-jitsu. And I just wasn't about that, you know.
I don't know. I don't mind the time off, to be honest. Like I think one thing. Let me stop there. I'm going to ask you different questions. Like, why do you get tattooed?
Oh, I like them. I think they look cool. Mostly, all of mine have a meaning to me personally on why I got that specific design. But the reason I get tattoos is because I think people with tattoos look cool as fuck, and I want to look cool as fuck. You know, look at this shit. This does not look cool as fuck. I need something to balance that shit out. All right.
Sure.
This is literally just a test to see if I've hit puberty yet, and the survey says no. Look at that. And once that's all shaved off, you know, I need something to actually give me a little bit of street cred. I think tattoos look cool, man. Like, I think they're a really interesting design. I think they've got a lot of prevalence in a lot of old cultures. Like, I think Norse tattoos look really fucking cool. I really like Maori tattoos. Would never get one because I'm not Maori. But yeah, man, I think tattoos just look cool. And I think, obviously, there's so much stigma around them. But when I was a kid, I was like, oh, you know, I'm getting tattoos because fuck the system. But no, it just comes down to I want to look cool, you know? What about you? Why'd you get tattoos? I'm guessing because you think they look fucking cool.
I don't think that's really the reason. I think there's sort of a grandiose, overarching reason why I get them, but I think my sister had them for a long time before I ever had one. And I guess in some subconscious way, I was just following my sister. But the reason I give is that I think that your body is a canvas and it should be painted with things that are beautiful, and 2, things that relate to that canvas, right? Tell the story of that canvas. And that's why I get tattoos, really. I get them because it's an opportunity for me to tell a story about my life and myself.
As much to express yourself.
No, yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. See, when you phrase the answer like that, I guess beyond the looking cool, if I was to look a bit deeper as to why I get tattoos as well, I think I'm from a pretty working class family. I think a lot of working class people around when tattoos started coming out were the people who got tattoos. I think it's only in the last 20, 30, maybe 4 years that tattoos have become a bit more acceptable. And I think, you know, being around people with tattoos constantly, like, it just wasn't a thing for me, you know? I was like, yeah, cool. Tattoos, I guess. Like you say, I think I was just subconsciously following in someone's footsteps.
Yeah.
And I like to have meaningful stuff on me the same way that you do. I like to express myself through imagery. I'm very much the kind of person that responds to and resonates with imagery very strongly. So why not put it on me so people can see kind of more of me through an outward image?
See, that's the only thing that's the difference. Like, I don't care for other people to see them. Now, that may be a little bit antithetical because I've got my knuckles tattooed, but you know, it was kind of only, I knew it, but the feelings didn't quite dawn on me until after I had my knuckles done. When, like, people only look at tattoos that I have because they're on my forearms if I wear t-shirts, but I predominantly wear hoodies all the time or some form of something to cover me. And when I was then walking through London and people would stare at my hands, I was like, oh no, I have my hands tattooed. Like, I can't go around wearing gloves all the time, obviously, but I mean, I could, but you know, whatever. But I think I don't care too much for other people seeing them. I care more for me seeing them, if that makes sense. Like, when I train now, I keep spats on so people don't see my legs. Like, my legs are relatively heavy tattooed. I've got both of the outsides of my legs done. I've got my thighs done. I've got one in the inside of my right leg is done. There's not much white space on my legs left. But you know, I put spats on because otherwise people just ask questions and I can't bother to answer them.
Yeah. So I would agree in terms of they are more for me. You know, I like them, I want them. And don't get me wrong, this isn't me saying that like I love the whole, oh, why did you get the tattoos? What do they mean thing? Like I don't love that question. I think when I was 18, I got my first, it was kind of a novelty, you know, a bit of attention for an insecure 18-year-old. You know, obviously I wanted that. But yeah, it's definitely more for me. But I think they look cool and I like looking cool for me. You know, I want to look good for me personally. That's why I work out. That's why I do anything to improve my body. And I want to feel good. I think looking good makes you feel good. Whether you think I look good or not, you know, I want to think I look good.
Yeah.
And I think tattoos are important for that. And obviously the added meaning as well. Like, life comes at you fast, man. Life really fucking throws curveballs at you left, right, and center. And I think having like a nice little bit of imagery to remind you of a time where something important happened or someone important came into your life, something like that, I think that's quite nice. You know,
I agree.
think representing a time in your life, like you say, it's like a tapestry of your life just on your body. You can kind of look back at it, and more often than not, you probably do the same. The hands maybe not so much, but I reckon even still, you just fucking forget about them. Like, especially if you're wearing clothes that cover them, you just fucking forget. And then, like I did earlier, I like put my arms up. I was like, oh yeah, I've ink on my arm, and you just remember, and then you'll forget again, and then 10 minutes later you'll look at it again, and then sometimes you just kind of stop when you look at it, and you're like, that's pretty fucking cool, actually. That's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. So like the first tattoo I ever got was on my left wrist, and you know, I've booked in to be tattooed if the borders are open in February in New York, and you know, I was like, oh yeah, I'll do my left forearm. It's clean. It's not clean. There's ink there, but for the life of me, I couldn't have fucking told you whether I had a tattoo on my left arm. Like, it's just so ingrained into me looking at my arm. It was like, oh yeah, I'm clean. Yeah, here's a picture of it. And he's like, that's not clean. I'm like, that is not clean. You're correct, sir.
I'll be there.
I am a fucking idiot. But yeah, I agree that you kind of forget them, and I agree that they give you. I'm not so sure about confidence. Like, I don't think that. Excuse me, sorry. Jesus.
Sorry, the confidence thing for me was back when I was an insecure 18-year-old, the attention and of the questions, that was like a little confidence thing. Not so much anymore in terms of confidence. It's just like I say, I enjoy feeling like I look good.
Absolutely. Now, I want you to ask the question that you were going to ask before when I rudely spoke over you.
I wouldn't say rudely at all. I was actually going to ask about your progression as a professional human being. I wanted to... Because we've kind of touched on this topic a few times here and there, but in terms of, like I say, finance is an important thing in my life, you know, sometimes it just has to be. And I find it interesting talking to people about how they make their money and how they do well financially, because I want to do financially well, but I don't necessarily want to follow traditional paths. I think having as much knowledge in that region as you possibly can is super helpful. So I just want to hear a little bit about how you professionally developed into the man that you are. Because not to give away any figures or anything, but if you just look in the room behind you, you're obviously not doing badly.
I mean, I don't mind talking about figures. I actually had this. I featured on a podcast called That's Good Oral with a lady called Pauline, one of my training partners' girlfriends, and you know, she asked me essentially the same question, so I'll give you the same answer. I don't mind talking about figures. I'm happy to talk about figures. So you're right. I own the house that I live in, or the flat that I live in.
Let's not talk about figures, just because for anyone listening, someone like me personally, I'd find figures quite discourage. I like to live in a fantasy world. But just, I want to talk more generally about like how you got where you are. And
fine. So I mean, let's predicate this by saying that I do not determine myself to be financially successful. I am able to pay the bills every month, right? So that's what I determine to be financially independent. So I'm definitely that, right? I earn
stable
enough.
Rather than successful.
Right. Like, successful to me, if I was financially successful, I wouldn't be living in a 1-bed flat in Southeast London in one of the highest crime areas in Southeast London, right? I just wouldn't be doing it.
I mean, you are doing most of the crime there, so
it's true. It's
kind of your fault.
Publicly stating that is not something I necessarily wanted to do. how did I get there? Okay, so it probably goes all the way back. Like again, it's okay. Let me predicate this slightly. So this is probably going to be a longer tangent, but we'll go with it. So
Please.
my family, as in my mother and my father, they weren't working class, but they weren't middle class. They owned a post office when I was a very young child. I wasn't alive, sorry. My sister was a very young child. No, I was alive. That was in Wales. So I would have been very, very small. Now that post office did pretty well, right? They owned the building the post office was in. The post office was the only post office in the town. And this was 25 years ago. Post offices were still the go-to place to do everything. Pay your bills, send your letters, do this, buy the newspaper, whatever it was, right? So they were doing pretty well. My father then decided he was going to change his career and he was going to work for a multinational food company. Have you heard of Break Brothers?
No, I've not.
Basically, if you go to a Wetherspoons, the likelihood is the food that is served to you has been delivered by a company like Break Brothers, right? So they'll send you all of the shit that you're cooking. They're not going to be like a sort of a higher chain restaurant where you're getting raw ingredients. They're going to send you onion rings. They're going to send you garlic bread. They're going to send you whatever it is you're selling. So all you've got to do is
already processed stuff, basically.
Exactly that.
Yep.
So I think he was I don't know too much about the guy, to be honest, but I believe he was a regional manager. Now, he did well enough that we managed to buy a very nice house in Telford, in the nice part of Telford. By nice house, it had 5 bedrooms, it had a garden, it had a garage. Like, it was a fucking nice house.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Now, when my mother and father split up, my father took essentially the lion's share of the money and left us relatively poor. So up until the age of about 8, I think life was bordering on middle class, probably, right?
Yep.
Then when my mother and father split up, my mother couldn't afford to pay the mortgage. We had to sell the house. We moved to a different part of Telford. And to say that well, actually, sorry, that's not true. We had to sell the house eventually, but I lived at that house for another couple of years, although it was my mother scraping the barrel to keep the house, one, keep the house in our name, and 2, to feed us, right? So we definitely lost. It was like a working class family living in a middle class house, right? That's basically what it was like. Now, when I turned 16, my mom said, you got to get a job. So I initially worked a number of retail jobs. I worked Burger King. I did this, I did that. The next thing. After that, my mom was like, what are you going to do with your life? And I said, I want to be a riot squad officer. That's what I want to be. There was like a careers day at school. I went there. This was college by this point, obviously. I went there and the guys were like, I don't think you're going to be able to get in because of your eyesight. I said, okay, fair enough. I'll do some more digging. I did some more digging. I couldn't get in because of my eyesight. Fine. No problems. So I went back to my mom and I was like, can't do it because of my eyesight. And she was like, cool. I need some fucking money to help support the house. What are you going to do? So I said, IT pays well and I know how to use a computer. I'll see if I can get in a job in IT. Now, in Telford at the time, there was an apprenticeship program called Xenos, a company called Xenos that ran an apprenticeship. And essentially it gave you 3 certifications at the end of it. They are called CompTIA. They're the certificate body that give the certificates out. And they're basically entry-level certificates in IT of some form, like a networking, a security, how to use a computer, blah, 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 blah. So I did a 36-week apprenticeship at this place called Xenos. And the deal was pass your exams and the top 3 scores will get offered out to the best companies. I managed to get an offer from one of those companies, and from the age of 17 to the age of 25, I worked like a dog for very, very, very little money at 2 different companies, one in London, one outside of London. So the company I worked with was called Visual to begin with. That was based in Stafford, up in North, or Midlands, it's not North. And I essentially worked for 12K doing 90 to 120 hour weeks.
Okay.
And yeah, from there, I got proficient at the job, right? You kind of have to. You're in a team of 4 people. you're an apprentice. There's only 2 guys that aren't apprentices, and you're dealing with really, really difficult, really high level problems from day one. And if you want to keep a job, you've got to fix stuff, right? So it was a sink or swim type of environment. I was paid nothing. I moved down to London. So when I went to London, I was being paid 37K. Now 37K sounds like a ton. 80% of my wage was rent.
Yeah.
So, you know, to put that into perspective, it's basically the same as I was doing in Telford or in Stafford, right? I was basically working to put a roof over my head and not much more. I had to borrow money from my mother in London because I hadn't eaten in a day and a half, and I had no money to eat. And it got to the point where I was basically robbing bread rolls from Sainsbury's. I'd go to the till with 2 in the bag, and I'd pay for 1, and the weight distribution on the till wouldn't know, so I just have 2 rolls. You know, it's that sort of level. And then I learned about contracting. So contracting is essentially when you're paid a day rate for your services and you own a limited company, et cetera, et cetera. There is a lot of money in contracting, and that is where I made the bulk of my money, was in contracting. I contracted for 1 company. Within a year and a half of contracting, I'd saved enough for the deposit on this place. And now I'm not contracting because of various tax rules that have changed, but because of the good stead that I built myself, I suppose, with the company I was contracting for, they chose to offer me a contract that would allow me to continue to pay all of my bills, right? Now, I was only contracting for 2 or 3 years. I know people that have contracted for 25 years that are now multi-millionaires. I am not a multi-millionaire by any way stretch of the imagination. At the current time, like where I am right now, I wouldn't even say I'm well off. Every month, my wage comes in. At the end, I'm left with nothing after I've paid all my bills and I've lived and whatever. So being financially successful is something, as I said at the start of this story, I don't think I am. But how did I get there? Picking the right field, right? And I didn't know that it was the right field. I just knew there was some money in it, and a lot of fucking graft. A lot of fucking graft and a lot of good relationship building. That's it.
I mean, the graft kind of goes without saying, really, knowing you as a person.
Oh, right.
As well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah. But also, in any situation, you know, you have to work your ass off. Like, relationships are great, and being good with people and having friends in the right places is great, and it's super, super helpful, but you just have to work your ass off. But no, I appreciate you telling me the story as well, because like you say, I'm sure we have a lot that we could relate on in terms of our upbringing and where we come from, the situations that we come from. So for someone like me who's a few years behind you and doesn't quite have like as clear-cut goals set out in mind, and knowing kind of how you progressed is really, really useful. I do have like a long-term career goal, like way off in the future, which I'm pretty sure I've told you before. But in between that, owning a jiu-jitsu gym.
Oh yeah, okay. We have had that conversation. Let me give you a small piece of advice now. IT was never my long-term plan, ever, right? IT was something to pay my mother's bills, or to attribute something to my mother's
contribute
bills. Yeah, exactly. I did not want to work in IT. I do not want to work in IT, really. IT is not something that I'm really, really, really fortunate that the company that I work for, the team that I work for, are by far the best in all of the experiences that I've had. And I've worked in multiple teams, multiple organizations. I used to be a consultant, kind of unofficially for visual, and I'd go to different places and deal with different people. And by far the company that I work for now is night and day the best that I've ever worked for. The team that I work for, Eric, my boss, is by far the best boss that I've ever had. But my passion doesn't really lie in IT. Problem solving is one of my passions, which is brilliant for IT, right? It's all you do all day, right? But there's vast monotony to that job, as there's vast monotony to every other job. My piece of advice, if I'm able to give one at my tender 27, nearly 30 years, is every single day, do something that's going to help you towards your goal. Now, cross-skilling is a real thing. You working with children will be bountiful, will pay you dividends in bountiful fashions when you come to owning a jiu-jitsu gym, because you're learning how to deal with the students. You may learn how to deal with the parents. You're going to learn how to deal with like how the teacher copes in chaos situations and all this sort of stuff. All that's going to be helpful. But every opportunity that you get, work towards what it is that's going to give you meaning. I've done a job that hasn't really given me meaning since I was 18, right? Now, again, the contracting life and this job has afforded me a flat in London. It's afforded me the capability to run a podcast, to invest into Pantheon, to invest into Balanced Clothing, to be able to go and get tattooed by some of the world's best tattoo artists, right? It's afforded me all of these things, and I am not ungrateful for those things. However, it's important to make a delineation that I am doing this job, this career, for the money, not for the passion. If I was doing it for passion, I'd probably do the podcast full time. I'd probably do some form of psychoanalytical work with children, and I'd fucking own a jiu-jitsu gym. But I don't. And I don't because I'm too fearful to change job role, and I've got too many financial commitments to move away from what I'm being paid right now to go back to uni. And not that I went to uni in the first place, but to go back into training and to switch job role and work my way up from the bottom once again in order to try and earn anywhere near what I earn now, right? So, but yeah, my thing is to learn or take from what I have done and do better.
So where is the ultimate working for passion goal for you then? What is the long term? So, obviously, you mentioned doing the podcast and owning a jiu-jitsu gym, but that doesn't sound like in your head that that's like what your heart is set on right this second. Do you have something in the future that you're looking to like concrete work towards for like your day-to-day?
I mean, I don't think that the world is going to be in a position where you do one thing and that's how you make money. I think the future of humanity is being multi-skilled. And for me, what I would like to do is I'd like to own a jiu-jitsu gym, a successful one. I would like to make Pantheon one of the biggest jiu-jitsu shows on earth. I would like to run a jiu-jitsu brand that gives back to those jiu-jitsu athletes for sponsorships and all that sort of stuff with balance. And if I could, I'd like to be a competitor, but I don't think that, and this is not me being a woe is me, but I think at 27, I don't think that the athletic prime that I am in right now, essentially, and the skill level I have right now is going to be conducive to me going and winning an ADCC or winning a Worlds or winning a Nogi Europeans, you know, like maybe, I don't know. But I also know that in order for me to do that, I would need to adopt a much more rigorous training regimen than my current financial situation allows me to do. So in terms of my larger goals, I think you're right. I think actually owning a jiu-jitsu gym is probably the primary one. I don't want the podcast to make any money really, because then you're tied into weird commitments about what you can say, what you can't say, what you have to say, etc., etc. I'd much prefer to just keep it free unless Spotify want to come along with a Joe Rogan type deal. I'm grand, I'm down, let's do this. But no, I mean, I think making money from Pantheon, making money from the Balanced Jiu-Jitsu clothing, not that I'm actually going to take any money, but making money from a Jiu-Jitsu gym is probably where I'm going to go. But all of those are passion projects, and it's just trying to find a way to make money out of passion projects. That's it. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people that I've spoken to in the last couple of years actually have recently started making points about how there was a big emphasis for a long time on finding what you love and making money off of it, right? Yeah. Like we say, we'll just allocate the term passion project to that. But in terms of the advice I've been receiving more recently, it's actually to do the opposite. It's to have a job and to have passions, because like you say, the podcast is a really good explanation for this. Once you become tied into commitments like financial commitments, through your passion, you do your passion because you want to, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you probably had days where you didn't want to do jiu-jitsu.
Today.
Like, I fucking I have trained through thick and thin. I've trained with a broken elbow, dislocated shoulder, torn ligaments. I have done fucking plenty of stupid shit. And there have been days where I've been healthy as fuck and I just didn't want to, you know? I just wanted to sit at home, play some video games instead. And I did that, you know? And I was allowed to do that because I hadn't made any sort of commitment to turn up and be training. And I wasn't tied into, if I don't do this, I can't pay my bills this month. You know, there wasn't that kind of trade-off. And as a result, I came out the next day and I was like fucking psyched to go. I was really excited to carry on doing what I love because I was able to take that day away from it. That's what a lot of people have been telling me, is that once you tie your finances up with your passions, it can be really, really hard to continue enjoying your passions because you no longer get that choice on those days where you really don't want to fucking do it. I'm not saying you wouldn't still enjoy doing it. I'm just saying that some of these people have suggested that you wouldn't get quite the same level of gratification out of doing it. You know, you wouldn't potentially enjoy it to the same degree. And I think Liam, again, is a really good example of someone who manages to appreciate just how sick it is to do jiu-jitsu all the time, you know, even though that is his job.
But I think Liam's a good example, and I actually think the point you're making is a really good one, and that's that you can have too much of a good thing, right? And if you're tying in something that's necessary with something that's leisureful and luxurious and passionate, then you can come unstuck. Now, my argument against that is essentially what I said before. Is one, being diverse, having multiple streams of income. Liam is not just a coach, right? His income is not derived on turning up on Polaris and getting paid whatever his purse was. That's not his income. His income isn't teaching 7 days a week. He teaches 5 days a week, something like that. Something like that.
So, yeah, he doesn't teach 7 days. He turns up 7 days a week.
Yes,
pretty much. But you're right. He's doing other shit all the time.
Yeah.
And like you said a minute ago, being multi-skilled seems to be the way that humanity is going.
And I think that my only argument is most people have more than one passion. And building failover, building redundancy into the financial sides of those passions will allow you to flip between those passions and keep that fire alive, essentially. As you said, somebody was like, do you want to train the gi? And I'm like, no, but I went anyway because, fuck the gi. But, I went anyway because...
Fuck Sean McGuinness.
Yeah, sure. That's a very, very, very poignant point. But if I had to train jiu-jitsu every day, you're right, there'd be some days that I wouldn't want to do it. But if I'm able to take a day off and do the podcast instead, or play video games or whatever, I think this is a good example of being ultimately siloed. Is I had an opportunity as a young kid, like 14, 15, to play Call of Duty 4 professionally, semi-professionally, I guess. Professionally wasn't really a thing back then. But me and my friend Ben, shout out to Ben Davis, been on the podcast, go and listen to it. We, at a time, were really, really good, like silly good. And if we'd have persevered, I am relatively confident that we would have been offered some form of contract by what's now a millionaire worth team, because they're all relatively they're all well off. They're all really, really, really well off, and they're doing whatever they want. But what they have to do is they play 14 hours a day.
Yep.
And sure, I, as much as you, love Warzone, but you don't catch me 14 hours a day on there. I'll play a couple of hours. Well, one, I couldn't because of time, and two, I could probably do it for a day, but I'd be bored. I'd be bored 5 hours in, and these guys are playing and they're streaming and this is their life. And I don't think I have the personality to be, and maybe you can argue against, but I don't have the personality where I could do one thing every single day forever.
No, I don't think I could either. I think it takes a special type of person to be able to do it. I think I can name a few on Twitch who can, and I have the utmost respect for those people. But I think if you were to ask me to be consistently good at anything for 14 hours a day, every day for the next 20 years, I would tell you to fuck off. I I think consistency is fucking hard, man. I
Yeah.
think consistency is really fucking hard.
Yeah.
I think jiu-jitsu is a really good illustrator of that. You can have two people who are basically like same skill level, pit them against each other day in, day out for 365 days, and I guarantee, there's going to be chopping and changing of who wins because it's hard to be consistent. It's hard to be consistently at a level, and it's hard to be consistently interested in something that you're doing for 14 fucking hours that doesn't change that much. When we're talking about like the minutiae of details, like millisecond response times, pixel perfect shots around corners, angles that just don't change, that you have to just be able to do from muscle fucking memory. Like, incredible craft. Could I do it for 14 hours a day? Not a chance. It's like you say, I'd be lucky to get 5 hours in. That's all I'm saying,
Yeah.
So I 100% agree. I think being multi-skilled does seem to be the way of the future. I think generating passive income is something that a lot of people have been saying more and more recently. I think that's generally the way of things. And like we were speaking about earlier, my housemate Nicole is already at 23 looking to set up passive income on top of her primary income, and I think stuff like that is fantastic. It's really, really useful. It's just hard to do, like finding a skill set that you can offer to other people that 400,000 other people don't already offer, potentially even at a better quality, because no one starts perfect at anything.
Yeah.
Just fact of life. I think that's hard, man. A bit of marketing comes in there, but then maybe someone did a marketing course that you didn't, and suddenly they're better at portraying themselves. So that shit's hard, but I think that is the way.
I'm going to offer, and this is the final piece of advice I'll offer on this, is have you read A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
I actually haven't. Funny story about that book. My biological dad I didn't have much contact with from the age of like 7 to 18. I met him again at 18 and he died 6 weeks later. But before he died, he gave me that book. And I was going to read it. I promise you. It's a psychological book about Viktor E. Frankl. He was incarcerated in a concentration camp during the Second World War, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah.
He lost his wife and his daughter, I believe.
And son, yeah.
And son, yeah. And obviously, please correct me on any details that I'm wrong. The book is from his perspective on life, and it's a really, really interesting read about how to essentially make the best of situations in some case, starting with your own mentality in a very simplified form.
The book is split into two halves. The first half is a recount of what happened at Auschwitz to him and to the people around him. It's very scientific, and he states that he left emotion out of the book because otherwise he wouldn't be able to write it.
Yep.
The second half of the book is his psychological field that he essentially created and pioneered, and that's around meaning, right? And he adopts, or he uses Nietzsche's phrase of a man who has a why can combat almost any how. And his example of that is about finding a meaning for your life and putting it at the center. So Frankl knew essentially when he was taken off the train and he was split from his wife and children that he was never going to see them again. But because his wife and his children were the meaning for his life, he managed to persevere through what must have been the worst thing that he's ever seen and many people will ever see ever. He persevered through it for a number of years on the understanding that he had to return home because that's where his wife and children were going to be. And in the back of his head, he knew that they weren't going to be there, but he had to make it because they were the meaning for his entire life. Now, obviously, it's now very grotesque for me to add the notion of money into this conversation. But to the people that say to differentiate your financial income from your passions, I think that it will only bring you some form of unrest if what you do doesn't have any passion in it. And I can attribute that to myself because otherwise I wouldn't be looking for other financial incomes. So having something that you do that has innate meaning to you, that you derive from it, to me, that's the goal.
I think that's a fantastic goal. I think the expression about if you have a strong enough why, you can beat a how is fantastic.
Big
I've
up
definitely
nature.
heard that before.
Big up
Yeah, I
nature.
think that's. And if you need a real world example of that, just watch Taken, the Liam Neeson film. That's all I'm
Sure.
saying.
Yeah. Sure. It's a brilliant analogy.
But yeah, man, I think that's a fantastic way of applying. And like you say, it's not the most politically, or not even politically correct, but it's not the most ideal thing to throw money into that exact situation. But you can extrapolate the concepts from that situation, of course. Yeah, and it's a book I keep meaning to read, but
You should read it.
Ironically, it got stolen.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, my house got broken into, and it was in a crate with like this couple of things I got from my dad, and it just got stolen. So I was like, well, if ever I needed a sign not to read that book. No, I just haven't got around to reading it, is all. I've very much gone off reading since I was a bit younger. It's just harder to sit down and read a book. Even stuff that I'm incredibly passionate about. It's just not a medium that speaks to me currently in the point that I am.
Do you do audiobooks?
I have done, but I'm much more interested in active consumption of media currently. Stuff like video games, stuff that really kind of grasps me visually as well as via audio, just because I have so little stimulation in my day-to-day life that sitting down and listening or sitting down and reading is quite difficult for me to do at the minute, but it's something I'll get to for sure.
So as the final topic, because I need to go and make food, what are you playing?
At the minute, I've actually I've been playing a lot of Warzone, obviously, but I've only got 2 games currently. One is Warzone, which is super boring to play by yourself, and one is Rocket League.
No, Warzone is not.
I don't vibe with it because, not to sound like a cunt, but I'm about to sound like a cunt. I'm better than most of the people in the lobbies I get put in because Warzone has so many variables where skill doesn't really come into it anymore, you know, and it's not even necessarily strategy. It's just I am unwilling to camp in a corner with an Origin 12 or an RK09 or a VLK Rogue and just fucking wait. But there are people who are willing to do that. And those people will fucking kill me when I'm dumb enough to walk into a house that I 100%. Wasn't patient enough to sit in. And I'd be like, cool, that's my game over. You have 2 kills and you're second, and I have 12 kills and I'm 15th. And it's just, after a while, that repetitive game cycle gets a little bit dull. I much prefer playing it with friends because I think there's much more strategy involved in terms of like rotations and stuff like that.
I do agree with that. I mean, I think that we can go into the minutiae of the game. I've spent a lot of time on that game and I understand it relatively well. But, you know, there are far more, like, I think, for instance, the easiest game mode is trios. And
yeah, I'd agree 100%.
I think the hardest game mode is quads.
Yep.
And I think...
And most frustrating is, I'd say, solos.
Yeah, 100%. Like 100%. It's frustrating because you've put a lot of, especially if you play the game. I mean, if you play the game your way, right? It's frustrating when you die to somebody that's in a building. But somebody that's in a building is ultimately extremely efficient because what they've done is they've completed either a contract or they've killed enough or looted enough to get their loadout. They get their loadout, or they wait for the first loadout, the computer given loadout, and then they wait, right? And they just wait. And look, at the end of the day, it's efficient because if they've managed to allocate themselves in a place where the final circle is roughly in, the amount of movement they have to actually execute is very, very small, and they will be able to catch people as long as they're accurate and as long as they're not doing something else at the same time. Now, I don't prefer to play the game that way. I find it quite boring, and I actually find that what happens is if you sit in a corner for long enough and you stare at one place, when somebody actually comes to that place, your reaction time is a lot less than if you're actually in gunfights. But anyway, the trios is so hard. It's so hard to get tactically right. But then quads is just, man, it's chaos. Another level. It's another level. It's chaos.
It's just chaos.
It is chaos. It is chaos. But yeah, tell me about Rocket League. I know Rocket League. I've never played Rocket League.
Rocket League is something that I'm actually going to do the classical thing and compare it to jiu-jitsu.
Oh God, of course you are.
Yeah, I'm going to compare everything to jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu is a great comparison for everything, unfortunately, and you know, sue me. Rocket League's one of those things that you can play at like a really, really simple level. You know, Rocket League has this feature called Boost, where basically, for anyone who doesn't know, the standard game of Rocket League is 3v3 with cars that have boost. You can use this boost to perform aerial tricks, and it's basically an enclosed dome with
It's a
one
football
ball
game,
that you
though,
can
right?
like,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. And you can use the boost to basically fly. And if you can get good enough, you can fly with the ball on the nose of your car from one end of the pitch to the other. And if other people against you aren't good enough to get up there, you've literally just won. You just fly the ball from one side to the other. And it takes serious fucking skill to control a ball in the air. You know, I've put some serious levels and hours into that game, and I'm nowhere close to being able to control a ball in the air. But if you watch like professional Rocket League, it is mind-boggling. The amount that they coordinate and have individual skill and talent is fucking ridiculous. And it's not an infinite amount of boost. You have to collect it around the pitch and stuff like that. But it's interesting as well because it's nice to have something you can be a little bit competitive in. And people love to get toxic, but there's a profanity filter that's just built into the text chat. So people have to get really ingenious, and you're on Europe-based servers, and people just love saying daft shit. Like, I put 5 fingers up your dad's anus or something like that. It's something that I got recently from a French guy who I beat. It was just fucking furiously salty. And that's been really, really fun because it's such a high skill cap that you don't even have to explore. You can literally keep your car on the ground at all times and just stick with people who are at that same level, you know. As long as you don't get too good. But the skill-based matchmaking like forces you to get better. You just end up in lobbies where people can do mad shit if you get better. It's been quite interesting. And for anyone who's looking for like some sort of thing to replace jiu-jitsu in terms of video games, and you play PC, no. Game called Mordhau, Mordhau. It is a medieval combat game. It's a melee game, and it has everything that jiu-jitsu has, just in a compressed version with swords and axes. It's ridiculous. It's fucking obscene. And I spent many, 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 many hours on that game until my PC got stolen. But it's fantastic. Movement, range, swinging angles, feinting, parrying, riposte, all of it's in there. It's super fucking addictive. The graphics are not the best in the world, but they're much better than RuneScape by a country fucking mile. But yeah,
leave me and my fishing grind alone.
Level 99 farming, that's all that counts. But yeah, I think video games have been a really good escapism for a lot of people within jiu-jitsu, which is something that really surprised me about the community. Like you say, you meet some fucking characters in jiu-jitsu, and I never thought I'd find people that have, like you say, you have multiple passions. I've never really met anyone that has all the same sorts of passions as me. Being a massive gamer when I was a kid, I never really met any gamers that were particularly athletic, but I was playing for the county rugby team at the same weekends I was fucking smashing 4th prestige on COD in a week, you know? Like, I was very much that both ends of the spectrum kind of person. I never really met anyone like that. Enter jiu-jitsu, every fucker's like that. Yeah. Every fucker has an interest in philosophy and bioengineering, and some people are like nuclear physicists or brain surgeons and just random bullshit that you'd never expect because they're talking to you about this sweaty guy that nearly snapped their arm in half, you know? And it's just super cool to meet people like that have that wide spectrum of interests and that ability to look outside of like the smaller picture, and you just meet good people. You meet arseholes, you meet a very small percentage of arseholes, but you meet really, really good people as well, which is nice.
I couldn't agree
like
with you
yourself.
More. Oh, mate. I mean, look, I think that's probably a lovely place to end, and that's that you do meet good people, you do meet negative people, but at the end of the day, we take what we can and we move forward. We accept, we move forward, right?
And the good people stick. That's why we're both here.
Oh, exactly. And look, I will thank you for your time. It's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you as always. And whether we do this on the podcast or not, it would be phenomenal if we could do this a little bit more often.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think now that we're both coming out of our cage and doing just fine.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice.
This would be I'd absolutely love to do this again, podcast or not. It'd be lovely to have a chat. And I really appreciate you having me on and giving me your time and giving up time that you could have been potentially eating. Like, above
Look,
all,
I mean,
that's
these things
so
happen.
important.
If you can tell people where they can find you if they want to find you.
No one will ever want to find me. And if you do try, I will break your ankles. So don't try and find me. End of.
Done. Well, George Huggins, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, my friend. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much, Harry.